Chapter 1265. Boss, your express delivery has arrived. Sign for it, and give me a good review. A lascivious man's voice came from outside the door. Get lost. Rinbochin laughed and got the central control system to open the door. A middle-aged man with an unkempt beard stood outside the door and smiled brightly. Boss, I missed you so much. The man laughed as he entered the door. A box that was more than 1 meter tall automatically slid in behind him. Ding Jia, why are you here? Did you run away from home? Rinbochin sat on the sofa, crossed his legs, and caught the cigar that Ding Jia threw at him. TSK, don't mention it. I was kicked out of my house. If you didn't take me in, I would have nowhere to go. Ding Jia pulled a long face and frowned. You're already 80 years old. Don't go to those erotic places. The corner of Rinbochin's mouth twitched. Ding Jia and Ning Kaichen were on the same side after all. Ning Kaichen had lived for more than 80 years by relying on the medical technology on Earth and had rarely used the power of the spirit sword. She looked like she was 40 years old. However, after the two of them got together, Rinbochin got a headache just thinking about those terrible things. You can't blame me this time. Boss, she actually said that I was a prostitute. I can't bear to listen to this. How can I be a prostitute? I'm so handsome. It's the time for a man to have money and status. How can I be a prostitute? Rinbochin sneered and didn't reply. He knew Ding Jia's temperament too well. He was the one who gave him the small cards for all kinds of nightclubs. If Rinbochin didn't hide it for him, the Empress would probably have turned him into ashes. Why did is called mercy. Mercy, do you know? That's Chu Liuqing's mercy. Ding Jia took a big puff of the cigar and exhaled smoke as he spoke with assurance. What did he say? The marshal of the bandits and the son of the hooligans. Bandit Marshal Yi Luqing is famous everywhere. It's Chu Liuxiang. Bandit Marshal Yi Luqing is a rapist. Rinbochin finally realized what Chu Liuqing was. Without this addition, who would have thought that he had changed Chu Liuxiang to Chu Liuqing? It was said that Ding Jia had also graduated from university and was a teacher for the first few batches of winged cavalry warriors for 2 years. In the end, he became more and more ignorant and incompetent. Fortunately, this fellow's ability to get things done had become more outstanding. He was smart and capable, and he had done a better job under Rinbochin over the years. The most important thing was that Rinbochin quite liked that this guy would joke around with him. There weren't many people like him nowadays, and there were only 2 or 3 of them on Earth. If the boss says it's fragrant, then it must be very fragrant. But why do I remember it was Mercy? We might not be talking about the same person. Ding Jia chuckled. Is the box the newly developed one? Rinbochin looked at the box. That's right, this is a model that has just been developed in the laboratory. It's basically a mature, magnetic field-driven bullet rifle, which is the so-called Gauss rifle, or rather, Gauss sniper rifle. Ding Jia's expression turned serious. He pressed a button on the box, and the box opened automatically. He took out 2 parts of the gun and assembled them. The Gauss SR-2 model is 1,670 centimeters long and weighs 19 kilograms. It uses a 12.7 by 99 millimeters special electromagnetic bullet and has a range of 12,000 meters. It can easily penetrate the frontal armor of a tank and can even be used to attack a spacecraft. The bullet can travel at a speed of 4,112 meters per second. As each shot needs to be recharged, the firing rate is 1 shot every 3 seconds. Its biggest weakness is that the recoil is too strong. An ordinary person's shoulder blade will be smashed by 1 shot. A Xian-level expert needs to wear a special half-body armor to use it. A Xian-level expert was a man-wheel expert and was much stronger than an ordinary person. However, it was still difficult to control such a weapon. Rinbochin held the gun in his hand and sized it up. It was black in color, had distinct edges, and looked very high-tech. There was a translucent black outer shell on the outside of the gun barrel, and he could see the metal rings inside through the passport. The stats of this gun weren't low. The most important thing was the bullet speed. The bullet of an ordinary gun traveled at a speed of about 400 meters per second. The anti-aircraft machine gun bullets that he used in the past traveled at a speed of about 1,000 meters per second. The bullet of this Gauss SR-2 model could travel at a speed of more than 4,000 meters per second. Even a Cardinal Heaven expert would find it difficult to react. As for the experts from Longevity Heaven, if they were to be targeted by more than a dozen of these guns in an open space, they would probably die with a grievance. Zixiao, let's go and try out the gun. Ren Baqian excitedly called out to the Empress, who was watching a television series in her room. Hello, Lady Boss. Seeing the Empress in red, Ding Jie immediately became well-behaved. He stopped smoking his cigar and placed his hands on his knees like a primary school student in class. What gun? Why did you call me? The Empress didn't have much of an opinion about guns since they weren't a threat. She didn't get impatient when Rinpoche called her out, but she didn't really care either. As for her identity, it wasn't a secret anymore. Most of the time, she wouldn't specifically say me. Gauss gun. From his stats, it can even threaten Longevity Heaven. Rinpoche patted the black, high-tech gun in his hand. Oh, the Empress's interest was piqued when she heard this. The three of them arrived outside the city. There were already a few pieces of metal placed there. Among them, the thinnest piece was equivalent to the main armor of a tank, which was 1 meter thick and had the defense of average steel. The other two pieces were double and quadruple respectively. Ding Jie eagerly loaded a magazine and passed it to Rinpoche. A blue electric current flowed on the metal ring outside the barrel. Chirp! The sound of the gun sounded like the chirping of countless birds. Rinpoche felt a force coming from the butt of the gun. It was equivalent to a punch that weighed about 300 to 400 kilograms, landing solidly on his shoulder. Then, he charged the gun again and fired. After firing 3 shots in a row, Rinpoche stepped forward to check the 3 pieces of metal that were 1,000 meters away. The first piece was directly penetrated. Even the bullet hole on the surface of the metal was dented inwardly and covered with black marks. The second piece barely penetrated. As for the third piece, there was no need to check it out. Try shooting me with a gun. The Empress began to get interested after watching the whole process. The power of this gun was much greater than before. Standing 1,000 meters away, Rinpoche fired the gun. The Empress stretched out her hand and grabbed the bullet in her palm. However, there was a black mark between her fingers that fell off in an instant. Not bad. The Empress crossed 1,000 meters and came in front of them. Even though this gun wasn't a threat to her, it was still a little threatening to the practitioners of Longevity Heaven. Ding Jie immediately became more well-behaved. He was even more impressed by his boss. He was much more powerful than Ning Kai-chen. His boss was still alive and well. He was simply a role model for men. Where's Hua? I don't know where he ran off to. Rinpoche raised the gun, aimed through the scope, and quickly locked onto a small figure. It wasn't big because it was too far away. In fact, this 4-clawed bird looked a little like a dragon in Western mythology and also a little like a pterosaur. Its strength was probably between the advanced stages of Kismet Heaven and the beginning stages of Cardinal Heaven. Rinpoche pressed the trigger, pressed the trigger, pressed the trigger again, pressed the trigger again. A clip of bullets was fired. Finally, he saw the little thing in the scope explode, leaving only a broken limb that fell from the sky. A big guy that was 3 meters long and had a wingspan of more than 8 meters was destroyed by a single shot. This showed how powerful it was. This scope isn't smart enough. It needs to be simpler and more accurate. Rinpoche had a plan in mind and threw the gun to Ding Jie. How much does it cost? 120,000 yuan. One bullet costs 130 yuan. What about the failure rate? The failure rate of this thing isn't bad, but it needs frequent maintenance and specialized equipment to be repaired. In addition, the bullets need to be stored in a special anti-magnetic box. Compared to traditional firearms, it's a lot more troublesome, but the power is worth it. Can we get the blueprints and manufacturing data? Think of a way. It shouldn't be a problem. We have to get the blueprints and data. In addition, we have to order 5,000 guns, 1 million bullets, as well as supporting ammunition boxes and equipment. In addition, the guns must have a smart lock chip. The smart lock chip had to be installed. With this thing, the sniping scope wouldn't be able to fire against certain people, and it had to be uploaded to the data center. Set a small goal first such as 1 second. Remember, booksellers. Chapter 1266. The train sped through the wilderness. Not far away was a highway with vehicles coming and going. Most of them were trucks, mixed with many small cars. Of course, those who could drive small cars weren't ordinary people. "This is Dayo," a young lady sighed. This was the third time in an hour that she had sighed. A middle-aged man was sitting beside her, looking out of the window in a daze. "Father is here, right?" the lady asked. "I don't know the exact location. I only know that he's in the south, on the other side of the 60,000 mountains," the middle-aged man replied. "He hasn't been back for so many years, and I've never seen him except for his portrait. In addition, I've always heard you guys talk about him. When I'm in the martial arts world, people treat me with more courtesy when they hear that I'm from Huashan Heights," the lady said faintly. "He always carried you when you were young, but he left later on because of some matters. You will know the details when you reach the capital," the middle-aged man said. The lady was Ma Runing, the daughter of Ma Hongyu. The man was Ma Hongyu's third disciple, Jian Fong. He was also the most promising among Ma Hongyu's disciples and had already attained the spirit wheel level. He sent Ma Runing to the capital and then went to the border between the two worlds to train. There were many things that Jian Fong didn't know how to say, so he changed the topic and said, "Dayo is very different from Great Xia. Indeed, I've heard of this train for a long time, but this is my first time riding it. It's much more comfortable than a carriage. I heard that Dayo used to be the poorest and most barbaric country in the world." Ma Runing asked. "Indeed, there's a joke that before the Empress got married, she would receive many gifts on her birthday, which are used to buy weapons and equip soldiers. At that time, the technology of every country wasn't passed on to the aboriginals." Jian Fong laughed. "This isn't funny." Ma Runing gestured for Jian Fong to lower his voice. There were already people glaring at them, and a few tall aboriginal men were glaring fiercely. "It's nothing." This was said at a banquet by Sir Tong, the Minister of Works. Prince Ren also laughed after hearing this. Dayo was indeed poor at that time, but it's completely different now. "It's interesting to talk about what happened back then," Jian Fong explained with a smile. As soon as he said that, everyone's expression immediately softened. "That Prince Ren is an extraordinary person. We should be able to meet him this time," Ma Runing asked curiously. Ever since she could remember, she had seen all kinds of things that came from Dayo, from toothpaste, perfume, spices, glass, comics, phones, and even popular cotton home clothes. Ever since she was young, she had always felt that Dayo was a beautiful and affluent place with all kinds of novel things. Later on, when she heard about the situation in Dayo, she still felt that it was incredible. It was only later that they found out that it was a single person who had changed the entire Dayo. He is indeed a strange person and also an interesting person. Jian Fong could not help but laugh. Back then, when he and his master came to Dayo with many experts, the prince hosted a banquet to entertain them. No one had expected the location to be a brothel. With the strength of the Empress, this prince was indeed very daring. However, this prince was indeed very interesting. This time, I'm going to attend the human emperor selecting ceremony. I'll be able to see him then. Apart from that, I'll also pay him a visit in private. While they were talking, a few black boxes that had been hanging at the top of the train suddenly lit up. An 8-horse tractor. It's fast and powerful. Most importantly, it's fuel efficient. There are repair points in every major city. Suddenly, a few pictures of a new tractor appeared on the screen, along with a string of advertising slogans. What followed was a scene of a brightly lit night under a tall building. A bearded aboriginal man sat at the table with a glass of dark green wine in his hand and a jar beside him. During the 12 years of the king's reign, we enjoyed the taste of success. It's the Minister of Revenue, Sir Tong, Jian Fong said in surprise. What's this? Ma Runing looked at the box curiously. I don't know either. There are new things appearing in Dayo every day. I haven't been here for a few years. However, it looks a little like the old street videos that taught people how to read. This is even more convenient. You can watch it anywhere. Furthermore, the things inside are different. Jian Fong laughed. Following which, he asked the person on the other side of the aisle, "May I ask, brother?" It's a television. It was released a few months ago. You're from Great Xia, right? The big screen on the street that you mentioned was actually recorded content and played on the street. However, it has been changed to this kind of real-time television program, which is different every day. You are right about one thing. This kind of television can be watched anywhere. It's indeed very convenient to buy one and put it at home, this person, who was from the Yun Nation, explained with a smile. However, he looked like he was looking at a country bumpkin. I see. Jian Fong suddenly understood. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the current affairs news at noon. Today, the Jing and railway has been completed and will begin operation in a few days. This railway also signifies that our country's railway development has basically stepped into small cities. It is reported that our country's Ministry of Works is about to start laying network lines. In a few days, desktop computers will officially enter thousands of households. Yesterday, the inspection team found that the quality of the milk provided by the students at Nanhu Primary School in Nanhu City did not meet the standards. They have entered the questioning stage, and the person in charge of the school's logistics department has been placed under supervision. Ma Runing stared blankly at the content on the television. After a long time, she sighed and said, "This is Dayo." She had already sighed 4 times in more than an hour, which showed how shocked she was by what she had seen and heard along the way. At the same time, many people were sighing the same way. For example, Great Xia's prince, Xia Yin, who had just arrived in the capital. In fact, he already felt aggrieved. Qi Zixiao went to Great Xia to snatch a dragon and snatched the rest within a few days. That was the lifeblood of Great Xia. However, no one could stop her. This was because she was not as strong as others. He grew up listening to his father and the people around him talk about the glory of Great Xia. However, as he grew older, he understood that the glory of Great Xia was only in the past. The current Great Xia had fallen to the point where they had to pay tribute to Dayo every year. This time, he felt the gap between the two sides even more when he came to Dayo. In terms of education alone, Dayo had used big screens on the streets and alleys to teach people how to read for the past 20 years. Nowadays, except for some isolated villages, there were very few people below the age of 40 who were illiterate. In addition, Dayo also opened public schools, primary schools, and secondary schools in all the cities. They even provided free lunch. Just these alone were unbelievable. However, at this time, they were actually punished because of substandard meals. This showed the importance that Dayo attached to education. With Dayo's current governance, as long as they didn't go against the trend in the future, the gap between the two sides would only grow. Even now, both sides were completely different countries from the same world. Every year, there were countless people from Great Xia who wanted to pass through the rear court to come to Dayo. One had to know that ordinary people had never been within a radius of 50 kilometers of their homes. Those who were able to understand the situation in Dayo and had the guts to pass through the rear court were at least more knowledgeable, and courageous than ordinary people. Many of them were even educated people or gentry. These people were also the cornerstones of country. If these people wanted to go to Dayo, what would happen to Great Xia in the future? First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, scholar's residence. Chapter 1267. This is the capital. Ma Runing sighed again as she looked at the tall buildings in the distance and the city that looked like a rocky jungle. She felt that she had used up all the size she had in this lifetime. Once she came out of the train station, she could feel the prosperity of this place. It was completely different from other cities. Everywhere was bustling with people. The capital of Great Xia was also very prosperous, but it was completely different from this place. Roasted sweet potatoes, roasted eggs, roasted corn, roasted sausages, scorpions, all kinds of poisonous scorpions. Even a cardinal heaven expert would feel like an immortal just by inhaling it. Mutton skewers, square heaven alpine crooked horned sheep, 20 yuan per skewer, free if it doesn't taste good. When Ma Runing smelled the aroma of food, she felt energized after a long journey. She looked around and saw that there were people everywhere. There were actually food streets on both sides of the train station. Many burly Aboriginal men and beautiful women had changed their professions to become chefs. Map. The latest map of the capital with subway and bus routes marked. It's a must-have for newcomers. The two of you, do you want a map? A teenager ran to the two of them. Let me take a look first. Ma Runing said, Look, this is the latest version. Bus routes, subway routes, major markets, shopping centers, tourist attractions, and even some well-known shops are all here. With this, you can travel alone, even if it's your first time in the capital. The teenager was young, but his eyes were sharp and his mouth was fast. A row of bamboo tubes hung on his back. He untied one of them, opened the lid, and took out a roll of map. Maruning took it and opened it. It was a very exquisite map that was 1 meter wide. Every location in the capital, including the palace, was marked on it. Furthermore, the regions were divided by color, and the bus routes were marked with different colored lines. There was also a row of words below, printed by Black Bamboo Institute, year 94 of the Dayo calendar. It had to be said that this map was much more exquisite and detailed than the official map of Great Xia. I'll take it. Ma Runing rolled up the map and said, 1,200 yuan. I'll tell the two guests that this map is out of print and won't be available in the future. The teenager grinned. He calculated their expressions and attire and increased the price by 6 times. What's wrong? Ma Runing asked curiously. She felt strange in her heart. Could it be that this kind of map violated some sort of taboo? But I heard that Black Bamboo Academy was founded by Prince Zhao. From now on, it will be the first year of the human emperor, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. There's no more Dayo history. The young man's face was beaming with joy, even though the big shots above him had nothing to do with him. This is my business card. If the two of you need a tour guide or something, you can call me. I can arrange it for the two of you. However, there was one thing that had to be said. A tour guide was a tour guide. They only sold their skills and not their bodies. Even the ladies in the brothels don't sell their bodies here. Seeing that the other party was willing to pay the bill, the young man stuffed his name card in. This can contact you immediately. Of course, this is a local number. As long as you are within the range of the imperial capital, you can find me at any time. The youth took out a small phone from his bag. This is a phone? Can I have a look? Ma Runing saw something new. She had a phone at home, and the line was connected from the backcourt. However, it was much bigger than this one. The phone in the young man's hand was the size of a palm. It looked rather exquisite, and it didn't have any wires. It could be carried around. Can this thing make calls outside of the city? A landline is fine. If it's a local number, it can't be used outside of the city. Ma Runing inquired for a while, and the doubts in her heart were resolved. In the end, she was dragged to a nearby telephone shop to buy a pair of phones. A country bumpkin, a young lady, not lacking in money, and there was even a payment machine beside her. This was simply a standard fat sheep. Before the young man left, he even asked the two of them to give him a call if they needed a tour guide. This young man is quite impressive. Ma Runing played with the phone in her hand and felt that it was rather interesting. Just now, she heard from the young man that he was actually a student and that he came to sell maps during the school holidays. Jian Fong hesitated for a while before saying with uncertainty, Perhaps he has enlightened the people. It's not the same. Look at those scholars. They speak and do things in a genteel manner. They give off a completely different feeling from this young man. Also, the people in the phone shop are all literate and young, but they don't seem to have the habits of scholars at this age. Ma Runing excitedly walked around the 2 food streets and ate for the entire afternoon. With the strength of an earth wheel expert, the food disappeared after entering her stomach, but it was a feast for her. Although the food was crude and not exquisite enough, it was full of variety and very unique. Along the way, she saw many people walking and eating while holding food or sitting on the benches by the roadside. This was a scene that couldn't be seen in Great Xia. Furthermore, this place was bustling. Needless to say, the 2 food streets were packed with people. The signage at the side was also very interesting. It could even be hung from the 1st floor to the 5th floor. How many people are there in the capital? Ma Runing suddenly asked. About 10 million, Jian Fong said with uncertainty. Jian Fong said with uncertainty. Although he had been here twice, every time he came, there was an earth-shaking change. For example, the two streets beside the train station were originally filled with open-air stalls and hawkers. Now, they had been built into buildings, and both sides were filled with shops. Many of them simply opened their shops by the roadside. Furthermore, based on his character, he wasn't too concerned about these things. However, it wasn't only him. Even the businessmen who came to the capital frequently would discover many new things every time they came. This is now a gathering place in the north of Dayo, and resources from all directions are gathered here. In fact, there is another city that is not much different from this one. It is the old capital, Lan City, which is not far away. It is the transportation hub of Dayo, and countless goods from all over the world are gathered there and distributed from there to other places. Speaking of this, there is something interesting. Lan City used to be called the Sleepless City. Later, after the capital was moved to the capital, the name of the new Sleepless City also spread. However, the people of Lan City disagreed. The Empress had moved the capital, but the Sleepless City had to stay. Therefore, every household hung skull lanterns outside their windows. As a result, at night, Lan City is incomparably resplendent and not inferior to the capital. It sounds interesting. The people there are also very bold to compete with the imperial family. Ma Runing laughed. You will know when you go there. There are strings of skulls hanging everywhere. As long as the wind blows, it will be like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. It is as if countless ghosts are whispering in your ears. Now, that place is called the Ghost City. As for their courage, they are, after all, the people of the old capital, so they are naturally more ambitious. Furthermore, the Empress and Zhao Prince Consort aren't petty people. They don't care about this kind of thing and are happy to see it happen. Zhao Prince Consort once said that it is a good thing for the people of Lan City to live like themselves and should be praised. However, I heard that he doubled the allocation of electricity to the city management department in the capital. Very interesting people. Ma Runing was amused. Chapter 1268. Ma Runing met Rinpochian in a side hall of the palace. Just like what she knew before, he was bald, had a metallic luster to his skin, and looked a little fierce. When she first learned about this prince a long time ago, she thought that such a smart person must be a refined person. Later, a picture in a newspaper made her put that idea out of her head. There were more than 30 people in the hall. Some of them, like Ma Runing, were descendants of top experts, and 2 of them had even fallen in the depths of the 60,000 mountains. In any case, they wanted to know what kind of enemy their fathers were facing. There were also some young experts who had stood out in the martial arts competition over the years. Some of them had already arrived at the forward operating base of the Dual Realm Mountain. More than 10 of them had recently reached the standard and would set off after the ceremony. Greetings, Zhao Prince Consort. Greetings, everyone. Rinpochian strode to the seat of honor and sat down, looking at everyone. Everyone here is from Dayo, the Empress Court, and Great Xia. A country is just a geographical division, and we are all humans on the whole. Everyone here is a talent of the human race, and I'm glad to see you all here. Rinpochian's words set the tone. In fact, in his opinion, a country really didn't mean much anymore. Whether it was the Empress Court, Great Xia, or the Qin Nation, if he wanted to, these 3 countries could be destroyed in 3 to 6 months and completely pacified and incorporated into his territory within a year. It was just that there was no need for that. Everyone, how did you feel along the way? Rinpochian smiled and turned his gaze to the side. These were all young experts from Great Xia and the Yun Nation, including Ma Runing. It's an eye-opener. The person who spoke was a young Taoist priest. There were many Taoist temples in Great Xia, the Empress Court, and the Yun Nation, and they all had different deities, making it very chaotic. This Taoist priest came from the Baiyun Temple, where an elder, the once world-famous Taoist priest Baiyun, had died in the 60,000 mountains. It's indeed an eye-opener. Everyone sighed. In just 20 years, Great Xia had changed a lot. However, compared to Dayo, it seemed to be a different world. Dayo seemed to have gone through hundreds or thousands of years and had a completely different look. This shows that my efforts over the years haven't been in vain. Rinpoche smiled. It is also what your seniors have been protecting: the survival and prosperity of the human race. The world-famous experts 20 years ago and the rising stars of recent years have been fighting and fighting on the edge of life and death all day long. They have been accompanied by desolation, loneliness, and death. It is all for this. I know what you want to know. In fact, this is not a secret. It's just that if it were to spread out, it would easily cause panic and slow down the development of the human race. Therefore, it has always been circulated within a small circle. Although there's news about the outsiders, it's not very detailed. You guys have to pay attention to this in the future. It's not necessary to keep a secret, but try not to spread it around. I know what's happening in a certain corner of this world, and what some people are doing. He didn't mind letting people know about the existence of the foreign races, but he wouldn't let everyone know about the current situation of humans. If the strength of the two sides were compared, the humans were like eggs, while the mutated races were like huge rocks. If such a huge gap in strength were to spread out, it would cause panic. After that, Rinpoche pressed a button on the table. An image appeared out of thin air and shocked everyone. The appearance of the television shocked everyone. They didn't expect that there was such a thing that could display images without the need of a medium. For a moment, everyone felt that Dayo's technology in this aspect was simply unimaginable. It had already exceeded their imagination. But soon, everyone's attention was attracted by the content of the screen. An incomparably majestic black wall stood there with no end in sight. It was thousands of meters tall and pierced straight into the clouds. According to the commonly used measurement in Dayo, 3 feet was 1 meter, which was 3,000 meters. The scene changed, and he was looking down from a wall into the distance. It was a dry and dead land, and an endless army was surging towards this direction from the distant horizon. Every step the mountain-like beast took would cause the earth to tremble. Humans were no different from ants in front of the gigantic beast. There were birds in the sky and countless beasts on the ground. Even though he was just watching through the screen, he could feel the immense pressure. Following that, a box landed in front of the enemy's formation. Following that, a light as bright as the sun, the ground shook, and a mushroom cloud rose into the sky. Looking at this scene, everyone opened their mouths slightly and couldn't say a word. Whether it was the mountain-like beasts or the sun-like explosion at the end, they were beyond their imagination. If that was an enemy, how terrifying would such an enemy be? What exactly was that attack? While everyone was still immersed in the scene, they heard the sound of drums and a man humming a solemn and stirring tune. That voice touched everyone's heart. Rinpoche added a background music called Conquering Heaven. Along with the humming, the scene changed to a canyon. Countless beasts attacked the top of the city wall, and thousands of Aboriginal soldiers were completely annihilated. Next, on another city wall, hundreds of people were fighting in the air. The Empress stood high in the air and kept flashing. She entangled with 2 mountain-like beasts and repeatedly put herself in danger. Countless cannons were set up in the city, and shells fell into the canyon like rain. Flames that were dozens of meters long spewed from the city wall, and countless beasts and strange races were buried in the sea of fire. Following that, Marooning Spirit was lifted. She saw a man waving a large brush in the air, and green wood and huge rocks fell from the sky. Although she hadn't seen her father before, she knew it had to be Ma Hong Yu just by looking at this move. In addition to her, many others also found their elders in the scene. After all, most of the experts from back then were very recognizable. Although the number of experts from the human race couldn't compare to that of the other party, the difference wasn't that big. Their strength was also far superior to the other party, and everyone could see that the human race had the upper hand at this time. However, the scene suddenly changed. A huge arm that was thousands of meters long stretched out from the sky, and with a gentle sweep, the city wall and the cliffs on both sides were all turned into powder. Everyone was frightened by this earth-shattering scene, and they even wondered if anyone could survive such an attack. Fortunately, the scene quickly changed, and the Empress and the others appeared in the ruins. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. This is the enemy? Why? Someone couldn't help but ask. This is just one of the enemies. There are thousands of races outside the wall of two worlds, and this is just one of them, Rinpoche said. As for why, it's just a matter of life and death. Our relationship with these foreign races is that they die and we live. As for the reason, it can only be said to be the hatred left behind by our predecessors. Perhaps there are more reasons that I don't know about, but they were buried along with the human experts thousands of years ago. All you need to know is that they want to destroy us, and we have to stop them no matter what. Following that, the image showed Li Fu, the Empress, and the others attacking the Thunder Barbarians, the 8-armed race, the Ginseng race, the Giant-armed race, the Herdsman, the Earth Spirit race, the Thousand Bones race, and the Sickle race. These are only a small part of the people. How many races are there outside the wall of two worlds? Your ancestors, your predecessors, those once famous experts, are now fighting against the non-human kind, fighting for a way out for the humankind. What about you? Seeing this should solve your doubts. This is the fate of all of us. What do you think? Are you afraid? Set a small goal first, such as 1 second. Chapter 1269. I'm willing to travel with all of you and fight to the death against the foreign races. It's not a pity if I die outside the borders. Someone immediately said. Although many people didn't say anything, their expressions said it all. Rinpoche smiled. Young people were always easy to incite, but it was always a good thing to be courageous. Like I said, this war isn't up to us to choose whether to accept or not. Back then, the human race was driven here from the area outside the wall between the two worlds. You should all know about the origin crystal and its effects. The most important part of the origin crystal is vitality, and the vitality in that area is far more abundant than here. Compared to that place, this place is just a barren wasteland. The human race was driven here. Now that the two sides have met again, their goal is no longer to drive them away. If it weren't for the existence of a human race back then, the human race would have been exterminated. Now, their goal is to destroy the human race. Everyone was as shocked as before. After listening to Zhao, Prince Consort's words, they finally understood how critical the situation was. Ma Runing suddenly realized why her father hadn't returned home in 20 years. So that was how it was. I'm not telling you all this so that you can fight the foreign races to the death. We don't need you young people now. It's to let you know the crisis and the future and the urgency of time. Improve yourself as soon as possible so that you can fight for a chance of survival for the human race in the future. You are all the talents of a human race, and each of your lives is precious. Your talents and efforts are the future of a human race. Now, there are 2 places for you to train in. When the time comes, we will arrange for you and give you as many origin crystals as possible. You just need to do what you have to do. Finally, it's still the same thing. It's not that this news can't be spread, but don't say too much about the specific situation to avoid causing panic. After Rinpoche had a detailed discussion with everyone finally understood where the experts had gone and what kind of situation they were facing now. Well, let's put this aside for now. Although the foreign races are strong, the human race isn't easy to bully either. Our individual strength isn't comparable to the foreign races, but we have a lot of powerful weapons. We have been doing this all along, so you don't have to worry too much. One more thing. Do you want to move your family here? The Imperial Court will provide for your family in any city in Dayo. Rinpoche's words made many people from Great Xia and the rear court think about it seriously. After coming to Dayo and seeing everything, Dayo was already in a completely different world from the other nations. Even if he didn't have to think about it, his family members and descendants would have a better development in Dayo. In the afternoon, they drank tea and chatted. In the evening, they hosted a banquet. When the ceremony for the emperor was about to begin, Rinpoche spent most of the day talking to everyone in detail, making them feel that he valued them. Are you done with your work? After returning to the palace, the Empress lay on the sofa and ate some fruits. You're already at the Human Emperor Hall in 3 days. You're the first emperor throughout the ages. You should be excited about becoming the Human Emperor, right? Rinpoche couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the Empress, who was becoming more and more homebody and losing her image. He had been busy these past few days, and it had nothing to do with her. I'm so excited. I was so excited that I ate 40 kilograms of fruits in the afternoon, the Empress said faintly, making Rinpoche feel exhausted. I don't want to talk to you, he said angrily. Your lover, the one called Lady Zhu, what's wrong? Rinpoche tilted his head and looked at her. He was curious why she mentioned her. The Empress knew about Lady Zhu's situation and even went to the brothel to see her. Rinpoche liked the music that she played because it calmed one's mind and made him listen to it when he was tired from court work. She's in the palace. Do you want to see her? I asked her to play in the afternoon. She played pretty well, but there wasn't much excitement. I didn't want to do anything and just wanted to sit here in a daze, the Empress said leisurely. I didn't see you move when you weren't listening to the music. Rinpoche was so angry that he laughed. Someone, send Lady Zhu back, Rinpoche called out. You will be busy tomorrow. This time, the censor promoted a total of 12 people from the Jing tribe and the Yun nation. The highest is secondary class, rank 4, and the lowest is rank 6. All of them have the right to participate in court discussions. In addition, for people have entered the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of Works. Your Majesty, you have to meet these 16 people and at least give them peace of mind. Rinpoche placed his hand on the Empress's calf and gently stroked it. Got it. In fact, I can't even give them peace of mind when I see them. I'm afraid that these people won't have an easy time and they might not be willing to be promoted, the Empress said softly. These 16 people definitely wouldn't have a good life if they were thrown into the hands of the Aboriginal barbarians. No matter how good one's mouth was, it couldn't compare to a punch. In particular, it was easy for the censor to offend people. If these people were to be reported, they would probably be beaten up in court. We have to take it step by step. After these people enter the court, there will be more and more people from the two races entering the court to participate in court discussions in the future, Rinpoche said. He had wanted to take this step for a long time, but only took this opportunity to implement it now. Even though the three races had begun to integrate over the past 20 years, it was another matter to let the two races enter the court. Dayo belonged to the Aboriginals, and only the Aboriginals should be in the court. This included Tongjinya, Qin Chuan, and the others. It wasn't a small matter to let more than 10 people enter the court to participate in politics, and there would be a lot of resistance. Not to mention other things, it was estimated that there would be a fight on the first day, and those people would be crippled. If the Empress wasn't in the palace to suppress everything, it would be troublesome if there was a fight. It was a good excuse to use the Emperor's coronation as an excuse. However, the Empress was right about one thing. At least half of these people weren't willing to enter the court. The other half were more responsible and were ready to fight for a way out for the people who came after them. The next afternoon, the Empress and Rinpoche met these people in the side hall. Among them, the oldest was no more than 50 years old, and the youngest was 35 years old. They were all earth wheel experts, and there was even a spirit wheel expert among them. The Empress encouraged them, and they expressed their gratitude one after another. As far as Rinpoche knew, a few of them even wrote their wills after returning. Rinpoche didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Going to court was more dangerous than going to war. It was the 15th of August, the day before the Emperor's palace. The entire capital was in a festive mood, and the number of people on the streets increased by 30%. They were all here to witness the coronation. Rinpoche didn't stop them. Although it was easy to cause accidents with so many people, the imperial court didn't care about these things. Is someone causing trouble? Rinpoche listened to the report from below and suddenly frowned with a cold gaze. Yes, the day before yesterday, there was a big fire on Phoenix Mountain, and the two peaks were covered in white ash. At that time, I felt that this was man-made and kept investigating. In the past 2 days, there have indeed been people spreading rumors that Your Majesty has been punished by the heavens for being the Emperor and is not tolerated by the heavens. As a result, this disaster has occurred. Have you found out who it is? Yes, it's the Bamboo Mountain sect. They are all remnants of the previous dynasty. One of them is called Bamboo Mountain Taoist, and his common name is Chun Dongxiu. Chun Dongxiu? I remember that the last emperor of the Yun nation was called Chun Dongsheng, right? Your Highness is perceptive. This person is Chun Dongxing's cousin, who has long been missing. In the end, he became Bamboo Mountain Taoist and has recruited some remnants over the years. According to my investigation, they are preparing to set fire to Chongping and Antong tonight to effect the ceremony tomorrow. Rinpochian's eyes flash coldly. Wasn't it better to live incognito for the rest of his life? What else was there to worry about? And the others, the people that Chun Dongxiu had recruited, what were they thinking? Rinpochian had been good to the people of the Yun nation all these years, and the lives of the people were much better than before. In the past, the people of the Yun nation barely starved to death, and many people still died when they encountered natural and man-made disasters. But now, no one had starved to death because of natural and man-made disasters in 20 years. Not only did the people have food to eat, but they also had books to read. Rinpochian didn't do badly, right? However, there were always some people who weren't satisfied and didn't want to give up. They wanted to jump out and cause trouble. A dancing clown, a scabbard. Since they want to die, I will grant them their wish. Kill everyone without mercy. Find out the identities of all the people involved, and I will exterminate their families. Rinpochian grinned. Chapter 1270. In the room, dozens of people were sitting cross-legged. A Taoist priest looked at them and asked, "Everyone, are you ready?" The Taoist looked a little sinister. He had a hooked nose and sharp eyes. He was the disciple of the Bamboo Mountain Taoist and also Chun Dongxiu's bodyguard in the past. He had the strength of the Earth embryo realm. Although he was already over 60 years old, he was still in the prime of his life. In any case, this is the capital of Dayo. After this operation, only a few of us will be able to escape. If anyone wants to quit, it's still not too late. It's just death. Even if I die, I want them to be covered in blood. A white-faced man with a long beard chuckled. He looked calm without the slightest fear. Everyone was impressed by him. Although they were ready to risk their lives, many of them still felt nervous and couldn't be as calm as him. Good. Brother Qingshan is very courageous. The Taoist priest couldn't hide the admiration in his eyes. This person was called Li Qingdai, also known as Li Chengshan, also known as Li Wanhua. He was proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, and many women in the brothels were obsessed with him. If that was the case, there would be many people who couldn't stand him. However, not only was he strong, but he was also decisive and courageous. Those who had interacted with him all praised him. To be honest, even the Taoist priest felt it was a pity to let such a person do such a thing. However, the matter at the Emperor's Hall was a big deal. In order to succeed this time, they had mobilized all the available manpower. Wait for another hour. We will start the operation at 7:45 a.m. Everyone closed their eyes and rested. Many of them looked nervous and couldn't calm down. They inadvertently looked at Li Chengshan and saw him leaning against the wall with an indifferent expression and a smile on his face. He didn't seem worried at all, which made them admire him. For a moment, many of them felt much more at ease. After an hour, before everyone was ready to take action, a panicked voice came from outside. "Oh no, there's an ambush around. It's the embroidered uniform guard." As soon as this was said, the faces of everyone in the room changed drastically. The rear guard commandery had been famous these years, and the embroidered uniform guard was also well known. In the early years, the rear guard commandery focused on internal affairs and external affairs. Now, they paid less attention to external affairs and mainly focused on internal affairs. There were countless spies everywhere, and there were embroidered uniform guards, non-staff personnel, in all walks of life. If one were to badmouth the imperial court at the banquet tonight, it would be placed on Rinpochian's desk in less than 2 hours. It was precisely because of the existence of the rearguard commandery that the remnants of the Yun nation hadn't been able to make a name for themselves all these years. Many of them had died in the hands of the embroidered uniform guards. This was a reputation that was washed with blood. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. The Taoists' expression changed. This time, everyone had cast aside their personal lives, but if they were all killed in one fell swoop before they even started, then they would die a very sullen death. How did they find us? And directly found this place? The Taoist glanced at everyone with a dark gaze. He had some suspicions in his heart, but he couldn't say anything at this moment. He didn't have time to investigate either. Everyone, get ready to break out. After breaking out of the encirclement, we'll act according to the plan. If we can't, we'll lie low and wait for an opportunity. It's too late. Li Qingshan shook his head with a sarcastic smile on his face. The embroidered uniform guard has already appeared here, which means that we have been surrounded. Given the strength of the embroidered uniform guard and the current situation, they must be fully prepared. No matter what, we can't just let ourselves be captured. The Taoist snorted. That's true. Either way, we're going to die, Li Qingshan said softly. The Taoist was annoyed to hear this. Although it was indeed dangerous, he didn't have to say that, right? Why didn't he realize that Li Qingshan's words were so harsh? In any case, the embroidered uniform guard isn't going to leave anyone alive. They won't even have a chance to surrender. Li Qingshan continued unhurriedly. The Taoist's expression suddenly changed. He suddenly realized something from these words. How did you know all this? Not only him, but some of the other quick-witted people also quickly distanced themselves from Li Qingshan and reached for their weapons. However, at this moment, a few screams came from the crowd. More than a dozen people attacked at the same time, waving their weapons at others. There were a total of 100 people, but more than a dozen of them suddenly attacked their companions. This caused chaos in the room. No one knew whether the people around them were their own people or others. You're spies. The Taoist's face was ashen. He didn't expect that this person who had been recruited for almost a decade was actually from the embroidered uniform guard. He also didn't expect so many people from the embroidered uniform guard to infiltrate. Sorry, I'm a spy. Oh, we're spies. Li Qingshan chuckled and opened the fan in his hand. A few big words were written on it. I'm a spy. These words were filled with indescribable mockery. The room was filled with screams and the sound of weapons clashing. Screams also came from outside the room. The people outside were attacking at the same time. The room was in chaos, and the people outside were surrounded. Everyone's heart turned cold. Let me introduce myself. I'm a Baihu of the embroidered uniform guard, Su Jinghu. I'll give you a chance to kill yourself. His Highness has already ordered that no one should be left alive. As for your identities, I know. His Highness wants to exterminate your entire family. This means that from today onwards, Bamboo Mountain Path will be a thing of the past. So, you don't have to worry about your family. Li Qingshan smiled brightly. After being undercover for almost a decade, he finally made a great contribution. Hard work? Of course it was hard work. In fact, he had long wanted to make a move on Bamboo Mountain Path. How could an undercover have the prestige of an official? But in that case, even if Bamboo Mountain Path was easily eliminated, he wouldn't have contributed much. Now, Bamboo Mountain Path intended to cause trouble on the eve of the human emperor selecting ceremony. As long as it ended today, he would at least be promoted to a high-ranking official. Of course, Bamboo Mountain Path was secretly fanning the flames, which was why someone suggested to cause trouble at this time. He wouldn't tell anyone about this matter. In this way, Bamboo Mountain Path's intention to cause trouble was quickly extinguished. Her Majesty was happy, Her Highness was happy, the commander was happy, and he was also happy. As for the people of Bamboo Mountain Path, they were rebels. They should be happy that they could still contribute after their deaths. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. The Taoist priest's face turned pale. With a roar, he pounced on Li Qingshan. The cold and threatening saber aura enveloped Li Qingshan in an instant. The Taoist priest wielded the prison-breaking saber and was quite famous in the Yun nation back then. It wasn't impossible to kill Li Qingshan and escape from this place. However, after making a move, the Taoist priest was shocked. Li Qingshan, who had always been at the intermediate stage of Earth Wheel, was actually at the Earth Embryo realm like him. He couldn't take down Li Qingshan for a while, but the sounds outside were getting closer and closer. The Taoist priest panicked, but it was too late to escape. He saw Li Qingshan and the other 20 people taking the time to take out sunglasses and put them on. They didn't even care that they were at a disadvantage because of this. At that moment, he felt that something was wrong. But before he could react, the two balls suddenly exploded in the room, and countless white lights burst out. Everyone in the room could not see anything in an instant, and they were deafened by the deafening sound. The balance of their bodies was also broken. Although they were all within this range, the 20 people were still wearing sunglasses. Even though they lost their balance and hearing, they could still see their surroundings. In an instant, countless screams were heard in the room. However, even if there were still people alive, they wouldn't be able to hear this. In an instant, the Taoist priest felt a heavy blow on his throat. His laryngeal bones were broken, and his strength gradually disappeared. He couldn't see or hear anything, but his mind was still working slowly. The Taoist priest revealed a sorrowful smile. 100 people, 20 embroidered uniform guards. Chief, we have always been under the control of the embroidered uniform guards, but we didn't know it. Thinking about all these years, he and the others were simply a joke. Chapter 1271. The incident on Bamboo Mountain Road didn't cause much of a commotion, and the fire was extinguished before it even started. It could be said that the reason why the fire was extinguished until now was that it was no different from pigs being reared in a pen. Once they were fat enough, they were pulled out and slaughtered. Year 99 of the Dayo calendar, August 16th. Early in the morning, Ren Baqian patted the crow general beside him. He hadn't ridden this bird many times over the years, but it had always been well fed. Its two long legs were almost gone. If it wanted to jump up, it would be defying gravity. Qi Shui affectionately cupped the Empress before hanging up the carriage. The Empress sat upright in the carriage with a red veil as the curtains. There was a table and a pot of wine piled together in animal skins so that she could lie sideways. Looking at this scene, Ren Baqian could vaguely see himself when he first came to this world. However, Qing Yuan and Hong Wan were gone. The two of them were over 40 years old and had long been married. Now that they were female officials in the palace, they couldn't work as maids anymore. The two maids behind the Empress were no more than 20 years old. One was called Shishan, and the other was Wang Ming. Compared to Qing Yuan and Hong Wan, they were obviously much more cautious. Your Majesty, today is a good day. Be a little more genial. Yes, don't look like everyone wants to kill him. Although an emperor needs to be dignified, being dignified and killing people are two different things. Don't be too relaxed and maintain the necessary solemnity. Ren Baqian put his hand on the side of the carriage and nagged. Shishan and Wang Ming covered their mouths and snickered. The Empress was a little annoyed and frowned. Aren't you annoying? I'm the emperor and have the final say. I can do whatever I want. What does what the world thinks have to do with me? Etiquette is still necessary, Ren Baqian said seriously. Etiquette? When the emperor ascended the throne, he was wrapped in animal skins. If you don't believe me, drag them out and confront them, the Empress said fiercely. Ren Baqian spread his hands. She had underestimated the ancient people. The level of smelting that the emperor wore wasn't bad. Before he came to Dayo, the level of smelting wasn't even comparable to the ancient people. However, it was impossible to confront them. There was a broken body of the emperor, but unfortunately, it couldn't answer him. Cut the crap. The Empress flicked her sleeves, and Ren Baqian flew onto the crow general. Depart. There were 500 winged cavalry warriors in front and behind them, and they left the palace in a grandiose manner. The civil and military officials, some invited princes of Great Xia, princes of the rear court, and some experts of the younger generation were already waiting outside. After a short pause, they entered the group one after another, making the group even bigger. The road from the imperial palace to the south was densely packed with people. The Aboriginals, the Jing tribe, and the people of the Yun Nation were all crowded together. There were heads everywhere as they wanted to catch a glimpse of the Empress. After all, the Empress had rarely appeared in recent years. Compared to when she was in Lan City back then, the commoners in the city had seen her travel. Although the imperial capital was bustling in the past, it was not as shocking as the streets were now filled with people. The two sides were shouting "Human Emperor" at the same time, making it hard to hear anything else. One had to know that there were nearly 10 million people in the imperial capital. Even if only one person out of dozens of people came, there would still be hundreds of thousands of people gathered. The press of people and the multifarious pictures and placards pushed together. In addition, the Human Emperor ceremony was being broadcasted live on all the big screens in the streets and alleys of Dayo. Everyone saw the Empress, who was dressed in a red and gold dress, lying on her side in the imperial carriage. From time to time, she would drink a glass of wine or eat a few fruits. Occasionally, when she looked up, her pair of indifferent and cold eyes seemed to penetrate everything and look into everyone's heart. Other than some old pedants, no one cared about the so-called solemnity and seriousness. What everyone remembered was that pair of indifferent eyes and that unparalleled grace that made people want to bow down and worship when he reclined there. Even if she was just lying there and didn't show any majesty, no one dared to act rashly. One look, and they knew that this was the Empress of Dayo, Qi Zixiao. Other than her, no one else had such a graceful bearing. Her Majesty still looks like she's 20 years old. On the streets of some cities, people looked at the Empress on the screen and exclaimed in admiration. With Her Majesty's strength, she will still look the same even after 100 years. That bald man is Zhao Prince Consort. He is the only one who can marry Her Majesty and is barely worthy of her. Ren Baqian's reputation wasn't low now. If the Empress didn't show up, his reputation would be slightly higher than hers. After all, so many people could eat their fill because of him. However, as soon as the Empress showed up, she was immediately outshone. Isn't she going to marry Her Majesty? Don't talk nonsense. The person who spoke was from the Yun Nation, and he was more careful than the Aboriginals. It's okay. You can't be punished for saying such things. The young man who spoke laughed. Many details of the marriage between Ren Baqian and the Empress came out later. At that time, many people felt that Ren Baqian was trying to get close to the Empress. Nowadays, there weren't many people who said that, and most people praised the two of them for being a good match. As a result, no one took it seriously. Ah ha ha, that's right. Not far away, an Aboriginal man laughed. When Prince Consort heard that he wanted to kidnap the bride, his face darkened and he said, "Let Her Majesty kidnap me." His Highness's brain is indescribable, and no one disagrees. However, with that small body, no one can beat him, let alone 20 years ago. That's the princess. She's so beautiful. Not only is she beautiful, but she's also strong and generous. That's the great elder, right? I've seen his picture in the newspaper before. Hey, who are those people? They're also among the officials. Soon, more than a dozen people in the group attracted everyone's attention. They are from the Taiwan Remonstrance Bureau. Didn't the news say that a new Remonstrance Bureau has been established to handle reports? All the cities in Dayo were bustling with noise and excitement early in the morning. Those who had televisions watched the live broadcast at home, while those who didn't have televisions went out to the streets and alleys and gathered in front of the big screens. Everyone sped up after leaving the city and walked for another hour before arriving at a huge building complex in the distance. The Temple of Heaven. It had the same name as the building on Earth, but it just happened to be the name. Construction began when Hua went to the Chun Nation, and it took a year and a lot of manpower and material resources to complete. At the very center of the building complex was the Temple of Heaven. It was 162 meters tall and had a total of 999 steps. They were all made of white jade, and under the sunlight, it was splendid and magnificent. Time was a little tight, and I didn't have the time to carve on every layer. I'll have to do it later, Ren Baqian said softly as he accompanied the Empress down from the carriage. There's no need to waste more manpower and resources. The Empress shook her head slightly and replied, "It's just a facade. I'm here to offer sacrifices to the heavens, the earth, and the ancestors. That's why this place is famous. Even if it's just a piece of broken stone, it's still a temple of heaven." While speaking, the Empress raised her voice and said, "This place is famous because of me. It's called Tiantai because of me. It shouldn't be called Tiantai." Rinpoche was silent for a while, tilted his head, looked at the Empress, and said, "I can't compare to your majesty in terms of bearing. I like your majesty's domineering look." Ahem. Honeysuckle coughed dryly from behind. "Father, it's business, it's business. Don't show off your affection. I ate quite a lot before I went out this morning. If I eat any more, I'll be stuffed." Rinpoche turned around and gave her a dangerous look. "Who asked you to have such good ears? Furthermore, didn't you see that everyone else was concentrating on sizing up the temple of heaven?" Chapter 1272. At this time, many people had gathered in front of the screens on the streets and alleys of Dayo. This was especially true for the Aboriginals. If one were to count, at least 90% of them were watching. In any case, it was impossible for them to go to work, not in this lifetime. In the past, the Aboriginals were either hunting or on their way to hunt. Now, with the changes in society and the support of the imperial court, most of them were either herding or raising livestock. A small portion of them were farming and had the most free time. They also had the highest sense of identity with the Empress and the imperial court, to the point where they had no reason to unconditionally trust and support the Empress and the imperial court. As for the Yun Nation and the Jing tribe, during the process of changing from an agricultural society to an industrial society, a large number of laborers entered various new factories. However, thanks to their huge population base, the number of people watching the live broadcast was several times more than that of the Aboriginals. The screen on the television began to split into two parts. One part showed the Empress walking up the Temple of Heaven and everyone stopping at the 8th level. The other part began to show some other scenes. A dilapidated, ancient city, a somewhat dirty environment, and bustling Aboriginals wearing animal skins. Lawn City. This is Lawn City. Some people recognized it at a glance. Lawn City shouldn't be like this, right? Aren't there skeletons and white bone lamps everywhere? Someone asked subconsciously, but he quickly realized that this was the Lawn City of the past. It's the Lawn City from more than 20 years ago. Someone quickly confirmed his thoughts. At that time, Lawn City didn't have so many public toilets, high-rise buildings, or skeleton lamps hanging all over the city. At that time, Lawn City was still the imperial capital, and no other cities competed with it for the title of the city that never sleeps. Some of the older people in Lawn City looked nostalgic and smiled when they saw the scene on the television. Then, cities appeared on the screen one by one. The smoke of war had yet to recede. He had seen and heard the broken city gates in the north and the big and small cities in the south, but they had now become precious video memories. From north to south, followed by Tianjin Basin and the Yun Nation, they all appeared on the screen. In addition to the cities, villages, and people. In a small brick courtyard, even the red bricks of the walls were exposed. A group of teenagers appeared on the screen, and one of them rode a motorcycle straight into the wall, causing many people to laugh. However, some people noticed that none of these people were ordinary people. They were all the sons and daughters of the big shots in the imperial court. They were also the first batch of students of Black Bamboo Academy. At this time, the screen was slightly dim, and a timer appeared on the top right corner of the screen, 70 to 72. Then, the number jumped quickly and became 99. Many people already understood that it was the 99th year of the Dayo calendar, which was also the current time. The image began to brighten up. Lawn City appeared in the camera once again. There were many more tall buildings in Lawn City, and there were crowds and traffic everywhere. The liveliness of the city was more than 100 times better than before. Of course, what was even more eye-catching was the string of white bone lanterns hanging on the walls of every house. When the wind blew, the bones rattled. This scene made many people laugh out loud. This was the lawn city that people now knew. Then, from north to south, cities after cities appeared on the camera again, forming a sharp contrast with more than 20 years ago. Many of the city walls had disappeared, and the cities had become several times larger. Concrete roads ran through the entire Dayo, and there were vehicles and pedestrians everywhere. There were street lights and other public facilities everywhere. Farms, and factories were located around the cities. Railways and highways ran through the entire Dayo, connecting the cities together. The image jumped from day to night, and the lights in the cities lit up like a bright city that never sleeps. From north to south, from west to east, cities, villages, grasslands, Tianjin Basin, the Yun Nation, from the changes in the cities to the clothes and appearance of the people, everything was displayed. It was completely different from 20 years ago. The numbness on the faces of the Jing tribe and the people of the Yun Nation was replaced by smiles. They were no longer thin due to hunger and malnutrition. Even the faces of the ordinary people were rosy, and their mental state was like heaven and earth. As for the aboriginals, the barbaric aura on their bodies was not as strong, and they were no longer as fierce as when they fought against the heavens. Most of the youths grew up in school. Although their bodies were still strong, their expressions were much calmer. Another change was that the original animal skin suit had changed into a gold chain that weighed half a kilogram. Laughter. Even some of the older people could feel the earth-shattering changes in Dayo over the past 20 years. Compared to the subtle influence of the past, such a comparison was more direct, more exciting, and more exciting. The young people were completely infected by the content conveyed by these images. They had heard a lot about what happened in the past, or perhaps they were too young to experience it firsthand. After seeing these images, they truly felt what Dayo was like 20 years ago. Apart from feeling emotional, they also felt a surge of warmth. This was the excitement and satisfaction brought about by the country's strength, prosperity, and bright prospects. It was also the anticipation for the future. Afterward, schools appeared on the screen, and countless students flashed across the screen. These were all huge changes in the past 20 years. The image changed again to a huge campus. The small courtyard that used to be a brick house had become a huge building complex that covered an area of hundreds of thousands of square meters. I never thought that it would become like this back then. Du Laolu sat on the sofa and sighed softly as he watched the images on the TV. Who said otherwise? Su Peng sat nearby and shook his head. I'm not talented in martial arts, so I thought that my future would be like fifth uncle, who raised me every day, did nothing, and waited to die. Later on, he suddenly asked me to go to school. I was dumbfounded and didn't have any expectations after I went. I was forced to go. Du Laolu laughed. Who isn't like this? Tong Lan included. Although she was talented, she was also forced to go. Besides Shi Yu and a few others, the only other person who was different was Shi Gan. That fellow doesn't look like an aboriginal at all, Su Peng said. Shi Yu and a few others were commoners and were different from Su Peng, Du Laolu, and the others. As for Shi Gan, he was never like them. Of course, you're different from us too. At least we have graduated, but you haven't passed your thesis yet. Su Peng mocked. You are so stupid that you don't look like an aboriginal. Du Lao's face immediately turned black. In a laboratory, Tong Lan, who was wearing a white coat, was busy making a design blueprint. In another room, Shi Gan was using a computer to replay the scene where he and the others appeared. A smile appeared on his face. He had been very handsome since he was young. Then he felt puzzled. Why didn't he have a girlfriend? He pondered deeply. The images on the TV on the streets and alleys were still playing. The iron-blooded, ferocious, and barbaric army was now orderly. The straw curtains on the windows had turned into bright glass. The animal-drawn carriages had turned into tractors and various other vehicles. The telephone made it convenient for people to communicate with each other, the TV broadened their horizons, and the train connected the whole of Dayo. A journey that would have taken a month in the past now only took 3 days at most. The emergence of the airplane shortened this time again. When the images of rockets taking off appeared, It represented that this world had finally begun to move toward the stars. In the end, when the images came to an abrupt end, the images that appeared made everyone cheer. In those pictures, the streets and alleys were filled with people. Countless people were looking up at the big screen in front of them. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Thank you, Your Majesty. Thank you, the Imperial Court. Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you, sirs, for all your hard work. God bless Dayo for thousands of years. Human Emperor. Human Emperor. Human Emperor." In the end, the cries of Human Emperor were heard, representing everyone's inner feelings at this moment. In the whole of Dayo, more than 700 cities, thousands of villages, and countless commoners were chanting the same thing. Everyone was infected by the emotions of the people around them. Their minds were stirred up by the strong impact of the previous images, and they were shouting from the bottom of their hearts. At this time, the sacrificial ceremony on the altar of heaven officially began. Respect the heavens. Respect the heavens. The most important thing was to respect the ancestors. The Empress looked to the south and was full of vigor. A huge clear figure appeared behind her. It was a woman wearing animal skin and holding a spear. Her eyes were sharp and cold as she looked ahead as if she was staring at her prey. The figure was more than 6 meters tall and was almost corporeal. After staring straight ahead for a moment, it raised its head and let out a soundless roar. That roar transcended the past and present, from the human race, tens of millions of years ago, to the present. Everyone present felt as if they had heard a cry from ancient times. They felt as if their hearts had been hit by something. Bursts of warmth surged from their hearts, and they wanted to shout out along with the figure above. Rinpoche had a strange look on his face. He seemed to have heard something, but he also felt like he was hallucinating. Tong Lan, who was in a laboratory in the capital, trembled and pricked up her ears as if she had sensed something. Shurgan blinked his eyes and dug his ears. Many of the bustling cities were silent for a moment, and then even more fanatical cheers erupted from the entire city. No one knew what the Empress was thinking at this time. With the foreign races as a major enemy, the Empress had always fought against them because she was a human and the Empress of Dayo. However, from now on, she was the Empress of the human race. She would represent the human race, carry the banner of the human race, and carry out the will of the countless ancestors of the human race without any retreat. Chapter 1273. The ceremony lasted for 1 day and was followed by a citywide banquet for 3 days. All of Dayo was in an uproar. At the same time, a general amnesty was issued, and the 3 days from August 16th to August 18th were set as official holidays. Regardless of what other people thought, Dayo had truly become the center of the human race. The Empress was the ruler of the human race. After drinking, Rinpoche seemed to think of something and asked the Empress, "Your Majesty, the one behind you doesn't have any consciousness, right?" "Behind? That phantom," Rinpoche replied. "No. As I said before, it's an afterimage formed by the combination of my spiritual sense and the mark left in this world by human experts." The Empress shook her head as she understood what Rinpoche was talking about. However, she didn't care too much and didn't like to delve into what was behind it. Anyway, it was fine as long as she knew how to eat and didn't need to understand how the dishes were cooked. That phantom is related to my spiritual sense, so it will be affected by my thoughts. Oh, it scared me at that time. For a moment, I thought she had come back to life. Rinpoche slapped his forehead. He still believed what the Empress said. With her current strength, she could already come into contact with many things in this world. Although there was no inheritance, there were some things in this world that were difficult to explain with current science. For example, after the Empress broke through to longevity heaven, she naturally knew how to walk in the air. If he had to explain it, it was probably because the inheritance was engraved in her genes. He wanted to study that phantom again, but unfortunately, it could only be stimulated by the Empress's full strength. Most of the palace was enveloped by the Empress's blood energy, and even Cardinal Heaven experts would be greatly suppressed. Four-way heaven and Kismet heaven experts were even worse off. Therefore, the Empress rarely stimulated her blood energy unless she encountered a strong enemy. However, he was still very curious because this wasn't a mark left by a knife on a stone. Instead, it was a mark left in a world by relying on great strength. It was incredible to think about. He didn't know how strong it was, but the Empress hadn't reached this level yet. He felt that this would involve something deep in this world and wouldn't be easy to study. At present, research methods were relatively scarce, and the results were unknown. Therefore, the priority wasn't high. At least, this was the case before technology reached a certain level. Half a month after the coronation, the feverish atmosphere in the capital gradually cooled down. Only after 3 months did it completely fade. After all, this was the first human emperor selecting ceremony in the land of exile since records began. It was also the first time that all the countries respected the human emperor. The impact of this ceremony was enormous. Within a short span of 3 months, Dayo had welcomed a wave of immigrants. After all, everyone could see the changes in Dayo over the past 20 years. Furthermore, the Empress had become the Empress. Everyone could foresee the changes in Dayo in the next 20 years, and that it would only become more prosperous and prosperous. Even some clans with strong foundations in the country that wouldn't easily move sent a group of people to Dayo to pave the way for the future of their clan. For young people, Dayo was extremely attractive. First, he had to be literate and skilled. Second, he had the talent to reach the Earth Wheel level at the age of 20. Third, rich. As long as one of them passed, they would be able to immigrate to Dayo. In just 3 months, the number of immigrants had reached 300,000. One had to know that in other countries of this era, these people could already be considered as the middle class. 3 months after the ceremony. Oh, they finally reacted. Rinpoche listened to the news from the radio station and raised his eyebrows. Stainless City had finally sent experts to suppress the war between the various races. They took longer than I expected. It took them more than a year to react, but this is normal. After all, the other races are slaves, and the Rolling Wind tribe is too few in number. No matter how much trouble they cause, they won't be affected. Rinpoche laughed. The messenger of the Rolling Wind tribe is very irascible. He killed many unrelated people and injured 1/3 of the followers. The bad news is that the existence of the White Lotus Society has been exposed to the Rolling Wind tribe. If they make any moves next, it is very likely that they will be destroyed like a boulder. There's no need to come. For at least 2 to 3 years, the population and food production of the other races in Stainless City will be greatly reduced. They won't be able to recover for at least 3 years. Next, we will infiltrate the South and find a way to make them chaotic so that they won't have time to pay attention to Stainless City and the Wall of Two Worlds. However, Lin Dong's next sentence stunned Rinpoche. You want to come back? The situation here has stabilized, and I won't be needed for the time being. It will be fine as long as there is someone here to oversee things, Lin Dong said faintly. I feel that the war is approaching, so I have to keep a disciple here. If it's fast, it will be half a year. If it's slow, it will be 2 to 3 years. In addition, I have to deal with the internal affairs of the sect. They have been making a lot of noise recently. Rinpoche became vigilant. What did you sense? He knew a little about the chaos and righteous sect. After all, the chief had been missing for several years, and it was inevitable that the people below would be restless. However, this wasn't the main point. The matter of righteous sect was just a small matter. Lin Dong was looking for a disciple at this time, but it seemed like he was preparing for his funeral. It's just a feeling, just like how birds and beasts sense disasters. The war may not be long, and there are some things that have to be passed down. Lin Dong's voice was as calm as ever. He then smiled and continued. Besides, Stainless City won't allow the Wall of Two Worlds to remain in this state. Sooner or later, they will have to deal with it. Previously, they felt that we weren't a threat and that the Earth Spirit could deal with us. Now that the Earth Spirit has returned in defeat, no matter how much we do and how weak we show them, they may not be able to drag things out as we hope. The initiative is in their hands, and this is very uncomfortable. No matter how much we do and how much we affect the overall situation, we can't determine the final outcome. In the end, it still depends on the number of experts. All right, I will arrange for someone to take over your matter, Rinpoche said. What Lindong said was right and wrong at the same time. Experts were important, but other aspects couldn't be neglected. Otherwise, the foreign races could just casually send out an army to trample the human race. Rinpoche wanted to shorten this gap. If there was enough time, technology might be able to close the gap between the two sides. All that was needed was an opportunity, just like the first and second industrial revolutions. Just an opportunity was enough for technology to develop explosively. Someone go and check if Xing Ruo is in the capital or Tianjin Basin. Ask him to come over. Rinpoche rubbed his temples after instructing someone to check on Xing Ruo's whereabouts. He thought for a moment before calling the research institute and asking, "How's the situation with the rockets and satellites? When will they be launched?" "All right, I will give you another month." Lindong was right about one thing. The initiative was in the hands of the other party, and the other party might not be able to act according to his expectations. Rinpoche had always felt a sense of urgency, and he hadn't slacked off over the years. However, Lindong's words still alarmed him. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second. Chapter 1274. How is it? Are you confident? Rinpoche sat in the room and could see the rocket standing in the distance through the glass. Countless staff were busy making the final preparations. "I guarantee it with my head." The tall white person in charge imitated the Chinese language. "Why would I want your head?" Rinpoche's expression didn't change at all. "I'm just expressing my confidence, Your Highness." I think they all said the same thing. "It's good that you're confident. I hope it goes well." Rinpoche replied faintly. There were still too few qualified technicians in Dayo. It would take at least a year to build such a rocket and satellite. Everyone at the base had to invest in it, and they also needed help from other aspects to complete it. If it failed, they would have to wait another year. "Is there any problem with the orbit calculation?" "I guarantee it with Smith and Johnson's heads," the person in charge said confidently. If the two researchers who were responsible for calculating the orbit heard this, their faces would probably turn green. "You learn pretty fast." Rinpoche glanced at him. At least he learned to use someone else's head as a guarantee and shift the blame. However, before the person in charge could laugh, Rinpoche continued, "I asked you to sit here in this position so that you can coordinate the overall situation and keep an eye on all aspects. If there is a problem, I will only look for you. If someone is going to behead someone, it will be you." In fact, Rinpoche could also watch the ascension through video from the palace, but he still wanted to see in person. Although this was the second time, the significance was different from the last time. This time there was a satellite. This was what Rinpoche valued the most at present. The value of a low-orbit satellite was too great. At the very least, it could ensure unimpeded communication and transmit video to understand the situation at the front line in time. This was something that radio stations couldn't compare to. However, this time, it wasn't a communication satellite, but a reconnaissance satellite that could use optical equipment at high altitude to take pictures of the ground and transmit them back. In the case of limited functions of a single satellite, reconnaissance was obviously more important. As long as this satellite was successful, it would no longer be unknown to the 237 regions. Moreover, Rinpoche had two important goals. One was to observe the red moon, and the other was to check on the situation of the Earth Spirit tribe. This satellite also carried 3 small detectors that would be launched to the position of the red moon after liftoff. Ever since he knew that the red moon was fake, Rinpoche had always wanted to know what it was. Maybe aliens? Just like Earth and the Horn Dragon Galaxy? However, the technology of this extraterrestrial life form is slightly more advanced. I wonder how many years ago they turned this place into a testing ground? Rinpoche was slightly lost in thought. If that was the case, then the joke would be too big. The result of his hard work in this world for more than 20 years was like a joke. Rin Baqian rejected this answer, but he couldn't help but think about it. After an unknown period of time, Rin Baqian was awakened by someone. "Your Highness, it's about to begin." "Oh." Rin Baqian raised his head and looked outside. He saw that the staff had already evacuated the rocket area. "Are you ready? All personnel evacuated? How's Apollo's work?" Rin Baqian asked. Apollo was the intelligent robot on the satellite. With its existence, the satellite named Sky, I could do more things. Of course, its lifespan was also tied to this satellite. After receiving the reply, Rin Baqian placed his hand on the button on the table. After a moment of silence, he pressed the button with his palm. A huge water column rose and spewed out layer by layer. The loud noise of the rocket's liftoff was half blocked by the more than 500 tons of water that spewed out in 20 seconds. However, the strong vibration of the ground could still be felt. If it were an ordinary civilian building, the vibration and noise would be no better than a magnitude 6 earthquake. Almost at the same time, after the water column reached its highest point, the rocket shot out from the water column into the sky. The tail flame turned 1/3 of the water into white mist. Rin Baqian looked up diagonally. After a while, he couldn't see it with his naked eye anymore. He turned his gaze to the screen at the side and heard a series of cheers. The first flight stage has been completed. Starting to change angle. The second stage has been reached. The first cosmic speed has been reached. The fairing is beginning to fall off. The second cosmic speed has been reached. Entering orbit. For an entire hour, Rin Baqian crossed his arms and stared at the screen without blinking. The surrounding staff couldn't be bothered with him. They were all nervously watching the flight of the rocket. The rocket has entered orbit. The satellite is preparing to depart. When this sentence was heard, everyone jumped and cheered. Everyone knew that they had succeeded at this stage. Rin Baqian's tense expression relaxed slightly, and a smile appeared on his face. Earth's launch technology was mature enough, but this place was different from Earth. The planet was larger, and the gravity was slightly higher. There were still many difficulties. At this point, everyone could finally relax. "Your Highness, the restaurant has prepared delicious food. Do you want to go over, or should I bring it over?" "Go over." When Rin Baqian returned after the meal, the Heavenly Eye had already contacted the launch site. At present, the satellite has entered orbit and is in good condition. It is expected to reach the range of the Red Moon in 26 hours. At that time, a probe will be launched. Zhixiao is a very beautiful elliptical planet. The surface area is estimated to be 3.7 billion square kilometers, and the land area is very large. From the current position, more than 50% of the area is land. Subsequently, a few pictures were sent back. Rin Baqian finally saw the whole picture of the planet under his feet. From the pictures, Great Xia wasn't the northernmost part. There was also a yellow and white area in the north of Great Xia, which was a desert and an ice field. He had long known that there were no signs of human habitation there. However, this area was unexpectedly large. Other than that, there was a large area of ocean. The 237 square kilometers of outer space were all south of the equator, extending all the way to the southernmost part of the planet. There were very few oceans as far as the eye could see, and the land area was more than 10 times that of the human territory. Rin Baqian also saw a line on it, which was where the wall between the two worlds was located. "This is Zhixiao." The surrounding staff looked at the picture on the screen and exclaimed. The guards behind Rin Baqian stared at the picture and couldn't move their eyes away. After a long time, they asked, "Your Highness, where is Dayo?" Rin Baqian stretched out his hand and drew a small area on the picture. "It's so small." The guards were shocked. In their opinion, Dayo was already vast and boundless, but they didn't expect it to be so small. In fact, the area we control is even smaller. We still can't completely control the 60,000 mountains. Rin Baqian shook his head slightly and stared at the bottom of the map. Soon, he would be able to grasp the situation of those foreign races. As for the Earth Spirit race, their ability to upload and download souls and life force really made him envious. If there was a chance, the first thing he would do was to attack the Earth Spirit race. First, set a small goal, such as 1 second. Remember, book house. Chapter 1275. Your Majesty, take a look. What is this? Rinpoche returned to the palace and excitedly placed a picture in front of the Empress. The Empress looked at him disdainfully. She had been to the universe, traveled to other planets, and even hunted down the king of that planet for a few months. Do you think I'm a country bumpkin? She stretched out her hand and gestured a few times. Is this Zxiao planet? It doesn't look very round. Where's my Dayo? Tis TSK. It's only the size of a fingernail. I will conquer the huge territory in the south while I'm still alive. That place is pleasing to the eye and can be the foundation of the country. Your Majesty, it's good to be ambitious, but you still have to restrain yourself and think about it when you could defeat Goddess Stainless. Rinpoche didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You usually watch TV series, eat snacks, drink, and play around, and don't even care about court affairs. If you put your mind on cultivation, you might already be able to run amok in the foreign regions. Is there no one in such a big area in the north? The Empress turned her gaze to the north, which was a large area of alternating yellow and white. There seems to be a small number of nomads in the north of Great Xia, but they are few in number, Rinpoche said. In fact, Great Xia doesn't care about the nomads in the north, and just take some precautions. After all, the environment there is too harsh. From the map, there are mostly deserts, rocky areas, and ice fields. There are very few green areas, and it's not suitable for survival. Aborigines? The Empress muttered. Rinpoche was slightly stunned. Her words gave him a flash of inspiration, and he suddenly thought of something. Some questions that had always existed, but he hadn't thought much about it. There were actually Aborigines in this area. For example, Great Xia and Dayo were the descendants of humans who originally went north. However, the Qin nation was established by the refugees of Great Xia and the Aborigines. Where did these Aborigines come from? Why were they all humans? It was understandable that the Aborigines in the area where the Qin nation was located were suitable for survival. But why were there Aborigines in the uninhabitable area in the north of Great Xia? Before the arrival of the humans, Great Xia was a barren land without the existence of civilization. Rinpoche thought about it and decided to send people to the Qin nation to investigate. He also had to investigate more in the northern region to see if there were any gains. What are you thinking about? The Empress asked when she saw that Rinpoche was distracted. I'm thinking about the natives. Rinpoche came back to his senses and told her what he was thinking about just now. There are many things I don't know. I don't even know where my brother is wandering in the wilderness. The whereabouts of my father and the late emperor are also unknown. The Empress's expression did not change much. Some things had happened a long time ago, and there was no need to be anxious. In other words, unless she was willing to throw everything aside and dive into that door, there was no point in thinking about it any further. Rinpoche was silent. Until now, he still didn't know what was behind the door that his brother-in-law had entered. He only knew that it was a one-way door that led to an unknown area. There were indeed too many suspicious points in this world. Did you send the detector over? Did you find anything? Rinpoche asked after a day. The detector has been sent over. Just as we calculated, the crimson moon is fake. It's just an illusion, and the detector directly entered it. However, there seems to be some interference inside, and we haven't received any news yet. However, there is something strange. Although it's an illusion from the trajectory of the detector when it entered it, there is an obvious curve, which means that there is gravity inside. Continue to pay attention and inform me immediately if there is any news. Rinpoche knew that the crimson moon was very mysterious. After all, it could hang in the sky for tens of thousands of years without anyone noticing that it was fake. After all, such a peculiar existence wasn't that easy to detect. However, there was no progress at all, which disappointed Rinpoche. It couldn't be said that there was no progress. At least he knew one thing. The existence of gravity meant that it wasn't purely an illusion, and there must be something inside. After pondering for a while, Rinpoche contacted the 60,000 mountains. Continue to put 5 signal transmitters into the door every hour for 3 days. Tie them to any animal and throw them in. 3 days was the time it took for the heavenly eye to circle Zhixiao planet. Although it wasn't a communication satellite, it had a certain ability to receive signals. If Zhixiao planet was still behind the door, it might be able to receive signals and find the location of his brother-in-law and the late emperor. Rinpoche didn't mention this matter to the Empress for the next 2 days. Since there was no signal, there was no need to mention it. In addition, the pictures of Zhixiao planet that came later attracted most of Rinpoche's attention. Are you still looking? You have been looking for a day. The Empress walked into a hall and saw Rinpoche standing in front of a wall with pictures hanging on it. Are there flowers on it? It's very strange. Rinpoche frowned. The other side of Zhixiao planet was very strange. There wasn't a large piece of land, only a few scattered islands, and the ocean was almost all black. 5 huge whirlpools were distributed on the surface of the sea like the mouths of giant beasts, swallowing an immeasurable amount of seawater every second. Even satellites could clearly see the existence of the 5 vortexes from high up in the sky. One could imagine their size. These 5 whirlpools have never changed and haven't moved, Rinpoche said in a deep voice. Moreover, the distribution of these 5 whirlpools is just right. 4 of them are at the 4 corners, and 1 is in the middle, as if they are guarding. I suspect that this isn't naturally formed. Rinpoche was a little uncertain. After all, the wonders of nature were sometimes difficult to speculate with ordinary thinking. No matter what the reason is, you have no other way but to think about it. What's the use of thinking about it? The Empress hit the nail on the head. Rinpoche opened his mouth. This attack had hit the nail on the head. It's better to think of ways to get more money. Tuan came to me again. Too much money is invested in the 60,000 mountains every year. Even if we extort money from other countries, it will be difficult to support it. I think the lottery is a good idea. They are all your people. It's not good to think of ways to get money from them, right? Rinpoche was still thinking about things like the problem of the Black Sea water, but these things were thrown aside by the Empress. Since they are my people, and I have difficulties, shouldn't they have the money to pay for it? Also, those aristocratic families and rich merchants have amassed a lot of money over the years, especially the biggest ones. If they weren't content with their lot, I would have taken the sword and taken it myself. Since they're so content, why not introduce an inheritance tax? Rinpoche smacked his lips and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then force them to rebel, and you can take the sword yourself? This was Dayo, not Earth or those modern countries. Dayo's development was radical enough. If something like an inheritance tax was really introduced, I'm afraid that the court officials would be the first to jump in anger. Or can we reduce the investment in the 60,000 mountains? After all, the sea route is now open, so the investment is much smaller and the transportation time isn't considered long. No, there are turbulent currents deep in the coast. Ships can only go near the shore, and the transportation volume can't be increased. The investment in the 60,000 mountains must continue. Not only can it not be reduced, but it should also be increased. Rinpoche decisively rejected the idea. Rather than collecting an inheritance tax, it is better to collect a wealth tax. Families with an annual income of 100,000 yuan will have to pay a certain percentage of the tax. The higher the income, the more wealth, and the more they have to pay. At the very least, this will clearly tell those people that the country needs money and that if they have money, they should take more. Then, let's collect a wealth tax. The Empress made the final decision. She was least afraid that someone would dare to rebel. Chapter 1276. You're here. Don't tell me you're here to talk about the wealth tax? Rinpoche asked as he put down the documents in his hands. He first leaked the news of the wealth tax to the court so that the others could be mentally prepared. Just as he had expected, just a leak would cause countless people to object. It should be known that if a wealth tax were to be imposed, The ones who would suffer the most would be the senior officials, wealthy merchants, and aristocratic families. These people happen to be the people at the top of a country. So be it. What's the point of keeping so many things that you won't bring with you when you're born and you won't bring with you when you die? How could they hope for a long time to come? In any case, it was fine as long as he could leave some for his descendants. No matter what, he wouldn't empty the family's assets, right? Wasn't it the same when he didn't have money? Now, after a few good years, each and every one of them has become pretentious. Tang Xinye grinned and said straightforwardly, "It would be great if everyone thought like you." Rinpoche shook his head slightly. This was reasonable, but he would feel the pinch if he took out his things, even if it was just a little. It was the same throughout the ages. However, he wasn't afraid that those people would form an alliance. Just like what the Empress had said, she was least afraid of someone rebelling. Under the suppression of absolute strength, there was no way he could stir up any waves. Then why are you free to come to the palace today? We'll talk about it later. Aren't you going to take a look at the liveliness outside? Tang Xinye laughed. Lively? Rinpoche was puzzled. Tang Xinye had informed him to watch the show, so it was definitely not an ordinary show. Qin Chuan, Minister of War, beat up Xinhua, Minister of Rights? Or Shi Qing and Jakohai fought over a girl in a brothel? What have I missed in the palace these past few days? You don't know? Tang Xinye widened his eyes. What should I know? Rinpoche was baffled. Someone is challenging the princess. The princess is waiting on the palace wall. Rinpoche was even more baffled. Someone challenged two flowers? What was going on? What was going on? Waiting on the walls of the palace? How could I not know about such a big thing? It's a young swordsman from Great Xia who is seeking a breakthrough and challenged the #1 person of the younger generation. Tang Xinye said with a smile. Yu Qing is the #1 of the younger generation? What else do you think? Tang Xinye glanced at him. Do you believe that you can't beat her? Isn't that obvious? Rinpoche didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His strength was like a hammer. On the surface, it was still all right. However, if he would really fight with someone of the same level, he reckoned that he would be beaten senseless. What's more, Twin Flower was an immortal sky cultivator. It made sense. Honeysuckle's longevity, heaven strength, was indeed the best among the younger generation. The Empress was the #1 expert of the previous generation, and Erhua was the #1 expert of this generation. In this family of 3, he was the only one who was crippled. Let's go and take a look. Rinpoche shook his head slightly. Where's the commander? Rinpoche asked the guard as he exited the door. The commander is at the palace wall. I'm the only one who doesn't know, right? Rinpoche glared at him. His Majesty came by just now, but you were dealing with some documents. I called you twice, but you didn't respond and left again. His Majesty was the one who allowed Sir Tong to enter. Rinpoche slapped his head. So that was what happened. Your Highness's guts. Tang Xinye gave him a thumbs up. Your Majesty is so generous. Rinpoche turned his head and walked out in a bad mood. When he went up to the palace wall above the palace gate, he saw a big umbrella with 2 chairs and a small table with melon seeds and snacks on it. 2 women were sitting there and eating melon seeds. You guys are so leisurely. Rinpoche was speechless when he saw this. He was working himself to death, but these 2 women were having a good time. I called you just now, but seeing that you were busy, I didn't want to disturb you. The Empress was very unique in eating melon seeds. She grabbed a handful and threw them directly into her mouth without spitting them out. Rinpoche sensed something and looked into the distance. He saw that there were actually many people squeezing on both sides, making a path in the middle. A young man in a long robe with a saber at his waist and his left hand pressing on it walked over step by step from afar. His aura was rising. Looking at this scene, Rinpoche felt a little familiar. After thinking about it carefully, something like this happened many years ago. However, at that time, he was below, squeezed in the crowd, and watched the heroic appearance of the Empress. Thinking of that scene, Rinpoche sighed in his heart. Time passed quickly, and Erhua had grown so much. That was really scary. On the other hand, the Empress hadn't changed at all. A wild spirit wheel expert, This strength is not bad. Ren Baqian evaluated after sensing it. The number one swordsman in Great Xia, Subai. He's very powerful, but look at me. He's still no match for me. Erhua looked down with a serious expression. Nonsense, there's a gap between the two of you. Ren Baqian kicked the chair, and Erhua stood up to make way. She then stood at the top of the city wall and immediately attracted a lot of cheers. Erhua was still very popular. As a princess of the imperial family, she was beautiful, the strongest person of the younger generation, and a strong practitioner of longevity heaven. Her personal style wasn't considered domineering, but rather close to the people. Naturally, she was very popular. She was even catching up to the Empress. I want him alive. Ren Baqian thought about this for a while, but didn't say it out loud. He would just let Erhua be. However, she was different from the Empress. After all, she had studied on Earth for so many years. Although she was usually a little mischievous, she rarely hurt people. As the young man's aura rose steadily, it was at its peak when he arrived at the palace. Experts who had been honed in battle would usually use this method to make their attacks when their aura was at its peak. However, when he was about 200 meters away from the palace, he was blocked by someone. A young man with his hair tied up at the back of his head, wearing baggy sweatpants and a white t-shirt, looking hip-hop style, was holding an iron sword, upside down in his hand. Want to challenge first? Is that Li Dai? I thought he was going to make a scene with Yao Ku. His stuttering hasn't healed yet. Erhua burst out laughing when he heard Ren Baqian's words. Father, you aren't usually so funny. There's something wrong with your style. But why did this guy come out? I said I don't need him. I haven't fought for a long time. Erhua frowned and twitched the corner of his mouth. The Empress nodded and said, although he's not as strong as the other party, he has a sword intent. He's a talent. While they were talking, the two people below had already started fighting. The great Xia swordsman didn't respond. He turned his body halfway, and a huge wave appeared in the air. The huge wave formed by the blade was extremely violent, as if it was going to destroy anyone and everything in front of it. Li Dai was like a dead tree in the huge wave, constantly being pushed up and thrown down by the huge wave. Li Dai was at a disadvantage after one face-to-face encounter, but his footwork was still steady. His eyes were fixed in front of him, looking for any possible flaws, and his sword was always behind his back. At some point, Li Dai's eyes flashed, and the sword in his hand quietly stabbed forward. That idiot fell into the trap. Erhua curled his lips. The front is to deceive the enemy. The momentum of the blade looks fierce, but in fact, it's restrained and reserved. The real killer move is the hidden blade at the back. That's when you look at it from a higher level. You might not be able to do as well as him. After all, Li Dai's strength is much lower than his opponent's. Ren Baqian didn't understand anything. Just like what Erhua said, the huge wave suddenly disappeared. A soft sound was heard, and the two of them had changed positions. Good. Li Dai spat out. His body swayed, and there was a bloody wound from his chest to his throat. Su Baimei ignored Li Dai, who was behind him. His opponent's swordsmanship was fast, but his blade was faster. His target was up there. He looked up and saw a lady in blue standing above him. Behind her were a few figures sitting down. One of them made him feel suffocated just by looking at him from afar. Qi Zixiao, she's actually here. Su Baimei tried his best to focus his gaze on Erhua. However, he felt a chill in his crotch and his belt loosened. He quickly grabbed it and didn't embarrass himself. Damn it, that bastard. When did he cut it? Su Baimei cursed in his heart. He only felt that the sword was fast, but he didn't expect it to be so fast, and cut his belt. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have held back. However, he had accumulated momentum along the way and had defeated another person. But now, he was completely deflated. Deeply embarrassed, he pulled up his pants with one hand and challenged her. He immediately turned around and left, not leaving a single word behind. Everyone was waiting to see the princess display her prowess in this challenge. But no one expected the sudden appearance of a person and a sword to turn it into a farce. I want to deduct his salary. I want to deduct his salary. Erhua looked at Su Bai Mei from the top of the wall and gritted his teeth in anger. The Empress pondered and said, "He's a good seed. It's a waste to keep him by Erhua's side. Send him to the Wall of Two Worlds." One had to know that Li Dai had just attained the spirit wheel level, while Su Bai Mei was already condensing a heaven-grade weapon. The fact that he could cut Su Bai Mei's belt without anyone noticing showed his strength. "It's just a little broken," Ren Baqian said. He didn't find it boring. This farce was much more interesting than watching Erhua beat up the #1 swordsman of Great Xia. Furthermore, he didn't realize that Li Dai, this stammer, was so mischievous. End of this chapter. Chapter 1277. The challenge in front of the palace turned into a farce, but it didn't have much of an impact. It was just a topic of conversation for some people in the capital. On the other hand, Li Dai's salary was deducted for half a year. However, Li Dai didn't care. To him, a steam bun, a bowl of water, and a rusted sword were enough. He was a very pure person who lived in his own world, the world of the sword. As for Su Bai Mei, who came in aggressively but left abruptly, not many people cared about him. Perhaps he was very famous in Great Xia, but this was Dayo. A week later, the imperial court officially announced the details of the wealth tax. Ren Baqian also met with some of the heads of the aristocratic families. Although there were still objections, they were forcefully suppressed. There were two voices in Dayo. One was the Empress, and the other was Ren Baqian. No one dared to question the former's control over the aboriginals. Ren Baqian's reputation in the Jing tribe and the Yun nation was also very high. As a result, the forced implementation of the wealth tax was pushed back. As for whether anyone dared to conceal the data during the tax count, Ren Baqian couldn't be bothered to think about it. In any case, he would deal with whoever he caught. For this reason, he didn't even hesitate to transfer elite troops to increase the investigation and military department of the Ministry of Finance. At that time, everyone would know that they could do anything as long as they didn't owe the imperial court money. "Master, the little lowly who has been with you the longest every day is here." The air flashed twice, and a lowly with a washboard figure in a cool swimsuit appeared. "Tell me if there's any news." Ren Baqian didn't even look up. "You are really perversely cold." The lowly pouted. Ren Baqian finally looked up at her thoughtfully and said, "These words aren't convincing at all coming from your mouth. Besides, I haven't heard these words before. Recently, I have a feeling that your intelligence has grown again." "Master, you aren't going to slice me up, are you?" The lowly shrank back. "Do you want a body?" Ren Baqian asked back. "You really want to slice me up?" The lowly was shocked. "Forget it if you don't want it." "Yes, of course. You could do it the way you like." A figure flashed in the air, and it turned into a voluptuous girl wearing glasses. "Ahem, Erha suits you better." Ren Baqian's face darkened, and he subconsciously glanced at the door before turning his head back. "Forget it. I'll think about it. What news do you have? Tell me." "All right, we've found the lair of the Earth's spirits," the iron-bespectacled woman said in a cold voice. Zhixiao planet was huge. Even from the sky, it took a lot of time to find the location of a race. Ren Baqian didn't really care that the other party was imitating Xian Zhe, and a look of delight appeared on his face. "Send me the data." A map appeared in the air, and a point was marked. Ren Baqian estimated that it was very far away from the wall between the two worlds, probably in the central and western regions of the outer region. Last time, the Earth spirits had walked for nearly 2 years before reaching their destination. Of course, the other party was advancing with a large army. If there were only a few experts, they would be able to arrive in 2 to 3 months at most. Zoom in to see the details. Following the instructions, the image gradually zoomed in. A large mountain range became larger and larger. Occasionally, a small dot could be seen, but it was an incomparably large, ferocious beast. The environment is somewhat similar to the 60,000 mountains. These mountains look like a circle. Ren Baqian could tell what was special at a glance. It was as if a pair of large hands had arranged the mountains into a circle, forming a barrier outside. Due to the layers of mountains, it would be difficult to detect if one was there in person, but one could see it at a glance from the sky. Inside, there were countless towering peaks that looked like sharp swords. Sword Forest Barrier. Ren Baqian spat out these 3 words. That's right. These peaks in the middle were extremely similar to the Sword Forest Barrier outside the 60,000 mountains. Continue. Ren Baqian suppressed these 2 questions to the bottom of his heart. The screen continued to zoom in, and soon, everything became clear. Altars were located on the peaks. There were many Earth Spirit tribes around the Sword Peaks. How many Earth Spirits are there? There are 22 large settlements, each with a population of 10,000. There are 342 medium-sized settlements, each with a population of 3,000. There are close to 7,000 small settlements, each with a population of 300 to 500. The total number of small settlements is about 400 to 5 million. Regardless of gender or age, all of them can fight. There are more than 2 million combatants, including about 400,000 at the Kismet Heaven level. This is a middle-level race. Ren Baqian sighed softly. According to the ratio of these foreign races, there were at least 20,000 Cardinal Heaven experts and 1,000 Longevity Heaven experts. The Earth Spirit had a strange existence that could be ranked among the top of the middle-level races, even if their combat power was lower than their peers. The ratio might be even higher. There were billions of humans, but there were only tens of thousands of Kismet Heaven experts and over 100 Longevity Heaven experts. Ren Baqian stared at the image for more than 2 hours before slowly instructing. Calculate a route from the barrier between the 2 worlds to the territory of the Earth Spirit and try to avoid those powerful races. I want all the information about the foreign races, especially the wars between them. Ren Baqian stared at the picture for more than 2 hours before slowly instructing. Although he wasn't ready yet, he could plan and calculate the route first. Ren Baqian then looked at some other pictures and took pictures of all the important cities in the outer regions, including Stainless City. There was also the distribution of the main races in the outer regions. This was a relatively large project and was expected to take at least a few months to complete. With these things, he would at least have a certain understanding of the situation of the foreign races. In the future, he wouldn't have to make plans and countermeasures without a goal. Now, he still had to wait for the progress of the Research Institute on the Earth Spirit. As for the relationship between the foreign races, he might be able to make use of it. Before Ren Baqian could lower his head after giving the instructions about the Earth Spirit, he heard a voice. Your Highness, the Yun Nation reported that the city commander of Guang was assassinated. A voice outside the door said. The city commander was assassinated? Ren Baqian frowned. The city commander was the lord of a city, and Guang wasn't a small city. It wasn't a small matter for the city commander to be assassinated. Come forward and speak. The city commander of Guang is Lu Xiang, right? Is he dead? Was it done by the remnants of the previous dynasty? There are still remnants? This matter has nothing to do with the remnants of the previous dynasty. What happened? Ren Baqian asked. He was in charge of the rearguard commandery, so he was naturally well informed. No matter what happened, it would immediately reach him. There's a martial artist in Guang called Wu Xian, who is quite famous locally. Continue. Ren Baqian thought about it, but hadn't heard of this name. Wu Xian is 26 years old this year and has the strength of the Earth embryo state. He is handsome and has a reputation for chivalry, so he is very popular. Many people admire him for his chivalry. Ren Baqian looked straight ahead and waited for the rest of the story. He was slightly puzzled. Previously, when he went to a restaurant, everyone stood up to respect him. There was a student who treated him as if he didn't exist and talked and was seen by his admirers. After that student left the restaurant, he was stabbed to death in the alley. The city commander of Guang ordered Wu Xian to move out of Guang, and if this happened again. After that, the city commander of Guang was assassinated. The person who assassinated the city commander was an admirer of Wu Xian. He felt that the city commander couldn't distinguish right from wrong, so he attacked him halfway. The city commander of Guang was seriously injured, and it was already critical when I received the news. If that Wu Xian really had a chivalrous act and didn't know anything about this, he should be innocent. Ren Baqian shook his head slightly. Since he wasn't a rebel, this was a small matter that wasn't worth spreading to him. However, since it was spread to him, there must be more to it. According to what I heard, the person who assassinated the city commander of Guang was on good terms with Wu Xian's younger brother and had leaked the information to him. Wu Xian's younger brother, Wu Jun, was never secretive and would tell Wu Xian everything, so he should know about it. Moreover, Wu Xian was brave and fierce in his early years and was often seriously injured or disabled in martial arts competitions. Although he had restrained himself in recent years and often repaid kindness with kindness, he was extremely cruel and often hurt people because of small things. So, he knew about it long ago but didn't stop it? Is there any evidence? No, but I dare to swear on my name that everything I said is true. Ren Baqian closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. The report from the city commander of Guang must be different from what you said, so you specially reported it to me? Your Highness is wise. The city commander of Guang was attacked, and now it's the Jisho who is in charge. That Jisho is old friends with Wu Xian, so he naturally wouldn't report the truth. Lu Xiang is from your Lingshan sect, right? Ren Baqian snorted. Your Highness is wise. Although Lu Xiang is a disciple of my Lingshan sect, everything I said is true. There is absolutely no falsehood. If what you said is true, Ren Baqian's eyes flashed coldly. In recent years, there have been great changes in Dayo. Information was advanced, and communication was convenient. With the emergence of local newspapers, television, and the internet, some things that shouldn't exist had also been born. For example, Wu Xian had admirers. In fact, he was not the only one. Many martial artists had admirers, especially some young martial artists with outstanding looks and strength. Their admirers were transforming into fan groups on Earth. This wasn't a good sign. In particular, some people would privately instigate these admirers to do certain things. Although they didn't show their faces, they were doing it for their own benefit. If things went wrong, it would cause trouble. This was a suitable opportunity, and they would kill the chicken to warn the monkeys. Only when blood flowed all over the ground could the others learn a lesson. They would know what to do, what not to do, what to touch, and what not to touch. Since they had this reputation, they had to do things that were in line with it. This was what it meant to wear the crown and bear the weight. For example, did Wu Xian really think that he would be fine after removing himself from the picture? However, a disciple of your Lingshan sect was actually attacked and killed by an admirer of a practitioner. Your Lingshan sect has been in a mess all these years. The people below suddenly shivered. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. I will send a message to the elders of the sect to seal off the mountain for 3 years and carefully discipline the disciples. He knew that Ren Baqian wasn't referring to the attack on Lu Xiang, but the fact that the Lingshan sect had disciples everywhere and occupied high positions. The person in front of him was a little unhappy. Sealing off the mountain for 3 years was just the beginning. Next, he had to pay attention to the situation of the disciples in the sect. The Lingshan sect had been upholding itself all these years, and he had always been impartial. This was why Her Highness had tolerated him until now. However, if he didn't know what was good for him, he and the entire Lingshan sect would be in trouble. Chapter 1278. Your Highness, the assassination of the Guang and city magistrate has been thoroughly investigated. It was done by Lu Qingqiu from Guang and city, and he has been imprisoned. It has been thoroughly investigated. Did you investigate it thoroughly, or is it whatever they report? What you do? What role did that Wu Xian play in this? Who investigated it? Or did you not hear anything? Ren Baqian's face darkened, and he threw the memorial to the ground. And the Department of Inspection, look at you. Ah, how much weight have you gained in the past few years? Can you still run? Can you still investigate the case? You don't even care about such a big case? Do I have to treat you guys? After scolding the officials from the Department of Justice and the Department of Inspection, Rinpoche glanced at Juyen, the Minister of Justice, and snorted. It wasn't just about the case, but also to knock some sense into them. These people had indeed slacked off in the past few years, and Rinpoche had long been dissatisfied. Take it down and see. Rinpoche threw the rearguard commandery's investigation of Wu Xiandown. Bai Shiying from the Department of Justice picked it up and read it. This person's crimes are unforgivable. He then threw the file to Tai Yin from the Department of Inspection. Tai Yin remained silent after reading it. In fact, he still didn't understand. The supervision in the country had always been the responsibility of the rearguard commandery. Why was he being scolded? This case has to be dealt with strictly and severely. It has to be set as an example for everyone to see. Let some people know that they shouldn't think that they will be fine just by hiding in the back and throwing themselves out. After court, Rinpoche turned a corner and saw Qi Shui running around the courtyard with a red figure on its back. Why are you so free today? Rinpoche smiled and walked over. Qi Shui braked suddenly and sprayed saliva all over Rinpoche's face. It's too fat. The Empress pointed at Qi Shui with a helpless look on her face. When we went to the Temple of Heaven, its physical strength wasn't as good as before. If we don't let it move, it won't be able to run anymore. Rinpoche wiped his face, looked at the fat version of Qi Shui, and thought of the crow general that was like an enlarged version of an old hen. He nodded. Qi Shui is 630 kilograms, and the crow general is 760 kilograms. Their meat production is indeed not low. Qi Shui was furious. It opened its mouth and spat on Rinpoche's face. Seeing that Rinpoche was about to dry himself, he followed suit and covered his face with his saliva. He gave Rinpoche a bath right away. Men, quickly put these away. Chilean saliva is good stuff. Send it to the Research Institute. Rinpoche didn't mind. Arrange for a plane, the Empress said after laughing for a long time on Qi Shui's back. I have some good news for you. Where are you going? Mount Liutsue. All right, I will go with Her Majesty. I have long wanted to see what is in the belly of the mountain. Rinpoche immediately agreed. Back then, the late emperor had gone to the belly of Mount Liutsue and returned with serious injuries. After recovering from his injuries, he disappeared without a trace. With the Empress's current strength, it was sufficient for her to explore. What good news were you going to say just now? The Empress jumped down from Qi Shui's back and slapped its thigh. Qi Shui sprayed Rinpoche again before leaving angrily. Sure enough, as long as it's a female, you can't say it's fat. Rinpoche squinted his eyes and said after Qi Shui left. How do you know it's female? I don't even know. Isn't that simple? Just throw a few surveillance cameras into the water. Rinpoche laughed and said, I came to this conclusion after studying its blood. Then he said, there's a nest of 6 flood dragons 400 kilometers south of the forward operating base. Doesn't your majesty like them? When they are caught, one will be barbecued, one will be braised, and the last one will be steamed. The Empress's eyes narrowed as she heard this. It was a joy that came from the bottom of her heart. This was the purest joy of a foodie. It's indeed good news. But what about the other 3? I sent some dragon bones to the Research Institute previously, and they want a live one as a sample. 5 are for me, and 1 is for you. The Empress raised her chin, and the meaning behind her expression was clear. She was very generous, so why didn't she thank Her Majesty? I will make the arrangements. Rinpoche laughed. A day later, Rinpoche looked at the mountain peak that was hidden among the countless trees in the distance and ordered, descend. The iron mine at Mount Liutsue had stopped operating long ago, and this place was deserted. The jungle outside had grown even wilder, and the original road couldn't be seen anymore. There were weeds, shrubs, and trees that were only 1 meter in diameter every 20 years. This is my first time here. The Empress got out of the car, went to the top of the tree, and looked into the distance. When I was young, I always wondered where my father had gone. However, these thoughts have faded over the years, mainly because there are too many things to do. The crisis brought by the foreign races is even more pressing, so I haven't been here. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to resist looking for my father after I found out the truth. In that case, why did you think of coming today? Rinpoche climbed up a branch, and with a thought, a wooden board and a backrest formed on the branch, becoming a chair that grew on the branch. A few small monkeys with big eyes were pointing at the two of them and shouting nonstop. This is a thorn in my heart. The more I don't pull out, the deeper it will be pierced. Especially after the worship ceremony, I always have this thought in my heart, the Empress said softly with a calm look on her face. Then, her voice changed, and she said in an imposing manner, "Back then, my father returned with serious injuries. With my strength, I can directly flatten any demons and ghosts." After saying this, the Empress took a step forward and was already more than 100 meters away. She then stepped on the air step by step. "Your Majesty, wait for me. I will go with you." Rinpoche tapped his feet, and with every step he took, a piece of green would appear under his feet. In a short while, the Empress arrived in front of Mount Liutsue. It was full of trees and vines, and she couldn't see where the original cave was. She simply raised her hand and casually punched out, causing the whole mountain to tremble. Gravel flew in all directions. Then she punched again. After 2 punches, a hole with a radius of 3 to 4 meters and a depth of more than 70 meters appeared on the mountain wall. The Empress suddenly stopped, snorted, and said, "Sure enough, there is something here." At this moment, even Rinpoche felt as if something in the mountain wall had awakened. The Empress adjusted her direction and punched out again. Rinpoche felt that Mount Liutsue shook a little. With a loud roar, there was a violent collision diagonally above, and half of the mountain collapsed. Rinpoche condensed a water screen and enveloped the two of them, blocking the dust and gravel that filled the sky. Suddenly, he felt that he was pushed by the Empress, and his whole body flew nearly 100 meters away. He saw the Empress's jade-like palm strike forward, and the sound of metal colliding could be heard in the air. Rinpoche could see the distortion in the air, as if a sharp knife had slashed on a wall. A low roar came from the belly of the mountain. "Oomph!" The Empress snorted and strode toward the belly of the mountain. Rinpoche hurriedly followed her, pointed to the sky, and a fireball appeared to illuminate the front. They walked forward for nearly 100 meters, and the space suddenly expanded. The roar became deeper and angrier, as if it was going to explode at any time. Rinpoche looked in the direction of the sound with the help of the fireball and vaguely saw a humanoid figure. Then, the figure suddenly disappeared. The Empress also disappeared along with it. There were a few consecutive collisions in the air, and the Empress suddenly appeared in the air, holding a person by the throat with one hand. Eh. Rinpoche looked at the person that the Empress was holding up. The person was naked, had round ears, and had a furry tail that was trying to break free from the Empress's hand. This figure looked a little familiar. It looks a little familiar. I think I've seen this figure before. Rinpoche frowned. It does look a little familiar. The Empress nodded. Where have I seen it before? Rinpoche circled around the two of them and saw the humanoid creature clearly. It had a ferocious face, and its eyes were full of violence. If it calmed down, it should still be considered delicate, right? Its ears and tail looked very interesting, and he really wanted to touch them. Her figure was not bad. What a lamp! There were actually no stains on her body. Her hair was at least 5 to 6 meters long. What are you looking at? The Empress's voice had an ominous tone. I think this figure is a little familiar. Rinpoche said in a deep voice. Then where are your eyes looking at? Look more clearly, and you might be able to remember. The Empress seemed to be annoyed by the constantly struggling foreign being. She moved and ruthlessly smashed her against the wall. Thump, 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 clang. The Empress smashed 3 big holes in a row, and the 4th time, she smashed a piece of metal. The Empress found the spot and smashed it more than 10 times in a row. The foreign being finally quieted down, and its eyes turned white. 60,000 mountains. 60,000 mountains. Foreign being. Ren Baqian didn't know when a chair appeared under him. He rubbed his chin with one hand and kept flipping through his memories. Lin Xiaola. Chinchilla. Ren Baqian slapped his thigh. It's the chinchilla race, the same race as Lin Xiaola. That tail, yes, it's like this. A short tail, like a ball. Chapter 1279. He had heard about the chinchillas from his brother-in-law, Qi Ziding. However, he had searched in the direction that Qi Ziding had mentioned many times to no avail. He didn't expect to see one here. It's indeed a chinchilla. The Empress nodded and frowned. Do you think the Chinchilla clan is one of the 10,000 clans? Why did Father Emperor come back with serious injuries? This chinchilla is at least at the mid-level of the longevity heaven. If it wants to take Father's life, Father will never be able to leave. Even though the Empress was able to take down the chinchilla in 2 moves, that was only because the disparity in strength between them was too great. The previous 2 emperors were no match for this chinchilla. At present, the White Lotus Society hasn't heard any news about the chinchillas in Stainless City. Ren Baqian shook his head slightly. The chinchillas puzzled him. Let's wake her up and we'll know. She has already gone crazy and lost her rationality. The Empress was more sensitive than Ren Baqian. In just a short exchange of blows, she had already discovered the problem with this chinchilla. Even if she's crazy, we have to find a way to wake her up. The chinchilla race is definitely related to that door. As long as she's awake, we'll have a huge harvest, Ren Baqian immediately said. The fireball on his fingertip grew larger and gradually expanded the illumination area. Ren Baqian tapped on the communication device beside his ear. No response. The signal is blocked. Let's wait for them to find us. Let me see what's here first. The mountainside was huge, comparable to 2 football fields. There are some plants here that haven't matured yet. They might be her food. The quantity is very small, so it's not a staple food. The staple food should be moss or mushrooms. There's no smell of feces. Maybe she doesn't need it, or she only excretes once in a long time, so the smell has dissipated. There's a spring, and there should be an underground river underneath. As Ren Baqian walked, he softly explained what he had observed. There are many claw marks here, and it's very messy. Before she went crazy, she must have suffered a lot of pain, loneliness, and despair. However, with her strength, she should be able to leave at any time. So why did she stay here? What was she guarding? Or are you waiting for something? At this point, Ren Baqian's voice rose a little, revealing his excitement. A moment later, Ren Baqian's joyful voice came from the belly of the mountain. Found it. It's very likely that this is what she's guarding. What? The Empress saw 2 balls of light approaching from afar. One was a ball of light, the other was a bald head. The Empress always felt that the bald head was brighter. This disc is embedded in a pillar in the deepest part of the palace. I have checked it, and there's nothing wrong with the pillar. It's only used for storage. Ren Baqian walked over with a stone disc in his hands. The disc was about 40 centimeters in size, and a hexagonal gem was inlaid in the middle. The edges of the gem were engraved with lines. What's on it? It should be their language. As for the function of this gem, we need to examine it to be sure. I can feel that it contains some kind of power, similar to the feeling of highly concentrated origin crystals. I've checked inside. This stone plate should be the most important one. We need to wake her up to find out the specifics. Soon, the people behind him found him. Check this place a few more times. Don't miss anything. Bring everything back for inspection. Don't miss even a single blade of grass. Take samples of the soil and stones in the cave back for analysis. Take away all the metals. After Ren Baqian gave his instructions, the Empress pinned the chinchilla against the wall again. After confirming that it had lost its ability to resist, she threw it to someone else. This trip came and went quickly, but it didn't resolve the doubts in the Empress's heart. The next day, Ren Baqian asked someone to find Lin Xiaola. Awu. Lin Xiaola yawned as she walked into the hall. She was wearing a simple t-shirt and denim shorts that revealed her long legs. What surprised Rinpochian was her hairstyle. It turned out to be a bowl cut with a short top. Who shaved it for you? Rinpochian couldn't help but ask. Why? That's good. I don't have to wash my hair every time I wake up. Why are you looking for me? I'm still sleepy. Rinpochian sighed. This girl really lived and died in her sleep. She couldn't sleep for a lifetime. Also, how dirty are you? You even find it troublesome to wash your hair? Are you about to reach adulthood? I don't know. Lin Shaola was at a loss when this question was raised. Forget it. Wait for me to finish my work. Come with me to meet someone later. Oh, Lin Shaola responded. She leaned against the wall with her arms folded, and her snoring could be heard in less than 3 minutes. When they arrived at the research institute, Rinpochian listened to the report and said, Let's see the one we brought back yesterday. It was a small one-way glass room with a chair in the middle. The chinchilla was tied to the chair and kept struggling. Fortunately, the chair was welded to the floor, and the floor of the room was made of a large piece of steel. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been easy to tie it up. The chinchilla had a ferocious expression, blood-red eyes, 2 sharp teeth protruding from the side of its mouth, and its nose was constantly puffing white gas. Take a look. Rinpochian gestured to Lin Shaola without saying much as he wanted to see her reaction. Rinpochian remembered that Lin Shaola inherited her genes. Perhaps she would remember something when she saw this chinchilla. Lin Shaola looked at the blinding headlights of the other party and then looked down at herself. She felt a wave of heartache. She pouted. So ugly. Rinpochian was confused. Don't you have any other thoughts? Did you send me here to let me know that I don't have the ability to breastfeed my offspring? Lin Shaola felt very wronged. Have you forgotten that I protected you with all my might? Rinpochian was confused. Do you King know what you're talking about? Rinpochian really wanted to press her head and smash her to the ground. He let out a few long breaths and finally stopped himself from exploding. She's from the same race as you, the chinchilla race. Oh. Rinpochian was helpless. Was this the only reaction from this girl? However, when he turned to look at Lin Shaola, he realized that she was staring blankly at the beast lady who was tied to the chair in the room. It seemed like she didn't have any reaction, just that she couldn't react in time. She was already this old when the Empress was young, but now, Honeysuckle was older than her. Although she always looked like she couldn't wake up and seemed to be carefree, she probably had her own thoughts. She has lost her consciousness, and we are trying to find a way to wake her up, Rinpochian said. She has returned to a pukin. This is just a body, and we need to bring her consciousness back from a pukin, Lin Shaola suddenly said. What did you say? Rinpochian turned his head in surprise. He was just trying to comfort Lin Shaola and didn't expect her to say such a thing. Lin Shaola repeated herself. How do you know? I just know. It seems like it should be like this. Rinpochian frowned. If this was a genetic inheritance, it meant that this situation was common among chinchillas. In other words, Lin Shaola would also experience this kind of situation. It was just like when Lin Shaola lost her consciousness in the 60,000 mountains. How do we bring her back to consciousness? Rinpochian asked. Jingyuhua. What kind? Men, bring me the plant samples we brought back from the cave. After a while, Lin Shaola pointed to a plant in a petri dish and said, This should be this. It takes 100 years to mature, and the fruit it bears can bring her consciousness back. Rinpochian understood at a glance that it was the small cluster of plants that he thought was the chinchilla's food. It seemed like the fruit of this plant could maintain the chinchilla's consciousness. How long will it take for this to mature? Rinpochian asked. At present, its growth rate is about 60%. If it takes 100 years to mature, it will take 40 years. However, after studying and analyzing the characteristics of this plant, we can try to accelerate its growth. Let's see if the crystals work. After staying at the Research Institute for 2 hours, Lin Shaola remained silent until they got into the car. After getting into the car, Lin Shaola suddenly said, If she wakes up, can the two of us mate? The driver in front almost kicked the car into the wall. Rinpochian almost choked on her words. Lin Shaola continued. two of the same species can mate, reproduce, and expand the population. In nature, a litter is 6 to 10. Considering that chinchillas are relatively strong, it is very likely that a litter will only have 1 or 2 litters. Based on Her Majesty's 3-year gestation period, the population can expand to 5 to 8 in 10 years. Where did you hear this from? The veins on Rinpochian's forehead popped. Erhua said it. She said that reproduction is the instinct of life and the only way to continue and expand the population. That chinchilla is a female, and so are you. 2 females can't reproduce. Rinpochian gritted his teeth and wondered if he should fry meat with 1 or 2 steel bars when he got back. Chapter 1280. After suffering a beating, Erhua's eyes were filled with tears, and he felt wronged. Stop pretending. I know you have thick skin and won't hurt even if I beat you. Rinpochian sat by the side and sipped his tea. Lin Shaola isn't an adult yet and has an innocent temperament. You should stop doing useless things in the future. Besides, you're always talking to people about mating and reproduction. What's wrong with that? She's older than my mother. According to what you said, Animal World should be banned too. Thump. Tsk, let her finish. Rinpochian squinted his eyes and looked at the Empress whose veins were popping out. I reckon that she sensed your presence and took the opportunity to escape after taking a kick from you. If you don't believe me, you can chase after her and take a look. Maybe she's still snickering. Anyway, she has thick skin and won't be affected by a few kicks. Rinpochian put the teacup on the table and smacked his lips. You're even worse than Erhua when it comes to scheming. Bang. Someone, go and inform them to fix the wall tomorrow. The Empress went out with a cold face. By tomorrow, the 2 holes in the wall would disappear without a trace. The craftsmen in the palace were world-class in repairing walls and repairing old materials. Even on Earth, they would be the best in the industry when it came to patching the wall without leaving any traces. Rinpochian rolled on the ground and pondered. The Empress was in a bad mood today. Forget it. He would go back and collect all kinds of tranquilizers to see if there were any that would be effective on chinchillas. Your Highness, we would like to ask Miss Lin to cooperate with us in some experiments. Oh, what did you find? Rinpochian was interested when he heard this request. The person cleared his throat and said, after using various tranquilizers, we found that some psychotropic tranquilizers have some effects when used in large doses. They can reduce the target's aggressiveness, which pointed out the direction of our research. After research, we found that the target's dopamine is too high, reaching 700 times that of a human's. We suspect that this is the reason why the other party has lost its mind. Therefore, we need Miss Lin to cooperate with us in some experiments. Dopamine. Rinpochian's mind flashed with information about dopamine and said, we can try to stimulate Lin Shaola with various scenarios and see if she can obtain more information from her genetic information. I'll have someone take her to the lab tomorrow. I hope to see the results as soon as possible. After Rinpochian finished speaking, he looked at the other person and asked, what results do you have? We discovered a weakness of the Earth's spirits. Speak. Rinpochian's interest grew. The chinchilla was very important, but the Earth spirit was equally important. We did an experiment. We divided the Earth spirits into a few groups and placed them in the same room with different creatures. We wanted to see how they affected the animals. This included canines, elephants, pigs, felines, and other Earth spirits' mounts. However, there was an unexpected discovery. The Earth Spirit clan was most intimate with felines, and it could be said that they had no resistance against it. When we take the cubs away from them, they react very strongly. Our guess is that the feline cubs are extremely similar to the Earth Spirit cubs, and that's why they feel empathy for them. According to tests, when they spend time with cat cubs, their dopamine levels are quite high, and they are more likely to feel satisfied. Dopamine again. Today's 2 pieces of news are related to dopamine. I didn't expect those Earth spirits to be cat lovers. Rinpochian laughed. What is the weakness that you mentioned? We just call it the dopamine of the Earth spirits. In fact, it's slightly different from dopamine, but its effects are very similar. The Earth spirits will be infected by the F5E virus carried by felines. This virus can lower the immune system of cats, and it's similar to AIDS. However, AIDS can only be transmitted to humans, while F5E can only be transmitted to cats. Now, there's another target, the Earth spirits. Moreover, this F5E virus will mutate in the Earth spirits and produce a blocking effect that slows down the regeneration rate of the Earth spirits and even causes them to lose their ability to regenerate. Oh, Renbachian was really surprised when he heard this. After pondering for a moment, Renbachian asked, "Is their regenerative ability related to their immunity?" The current evidence shows that there's at least an indirect connection. According to our speculation, there may be a link in the middle that we haven't discovered. I need more. You guys have to speed up. I'm here to apply for funds and manpower. In addition, the number of Earth Spirit samples is small, and 2 have died due to the F5E virus. We need more samples, especially the Earth Spirit samples who are weaker than Longevity Heaven. The Earth Spirit is too far away from here. It's impossible to have new samples for at least 2 years, Renbachian said directly. He had no other way to deal with this matter. How does F5E spread? Mainly through bites. This is too slow. I need a faster method of transmission. Add a separate F5E virus research lab and place it on the outskirts of Mount Beginning. I'll transfer manpower to you later. After the heads of the 2 laboratories left, Renbachian thought for a moment. Bites spread too slowly. Even after 10 years, it will be difficult for the number of infections to exceed 10% of the Earth Spirit population. It was only suitable for a long time, but unfortunately, it didn't last that long. Only a simpler and more convenient transmission method could effectively weaken the Earth Spirit and formulate a plan based on it. However, some things had to be prepared early. There were felines in this world, but there were no small cats. Most of them were big felines that were more than 3 meters long. He also had to bring back a batch of cats from Earth to breed. After that, everything was carried out step by step. 3 months later, bad news arrived. A coalition of 5,000 people, including 500 Longevity Heaven experts, was mobilized by Stainless City to encircle the human experts in the territory of the Flint Rock race. The 8-arm race wasn't like the Earth Spirit, which had high abilities but low martial arts. They also didn't have obvious weaknesses like the Flint Rock race. This coalition of more than 10 8-arm race settlements immediately put a lot of pressure on Li Fu, Li Yuanzhu, and the others. Even with the help of various long-range reconnaissance equipment, they were almost surrounded. The Empress had no choice but to rush to the front line in advance to stabilize the situation. The most important thing now is to stall for time and not fight recklessly. Once you encounter them, escape as soon as possible. If you encounter danger, cut off your tail, Renbachian exhorted before she left. Try not to expose your strength. If they know that the humans have experts like you, Stainless City won't be able to sit still. At that time, what awaits us will be the most tragic encirclement. I understand. Remember, take good care of my dragons. I'll find trouble with you if one of them dies. The Empress was a little resentful. They had caught 5 of the dragons from the nest that they had discovered a few months ago and were on their way back. They wanted to eat them before leaving, but that wasn't possible now. Perhaps when you come back, not only will there be no fewer, but there might even be more. Renbachian laughed. Do you want me to stay there for 8 to 10 years, so that you can hug them from behind? The Empress was furious when she heard this. What are you thinking about? We ran to 2 before and found another nest by following the route they took. Renbachian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Besides, who told you that the Flood Dragon reproduction device only lasts 8 to 10 years? Great Xia has been raising them for hundreds of years, and there are only a few of them. The Empress's expression brightened at first and then darkened. Even if they found another nest, she wouldn't be able to eat them in a short period of time. Chapter 1281. This cup of wine is a toast to young Master Wu, but I have never had the chance to meet you. Now that I have seen you, it seems that hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. A woman in red said to a handsome young man with watery eyes and a smile. Speaking of which, Miss Yin has also wanted to meet young Master Wu several times. Today, she finally lived up to her expectations and invited young Master Wu out. A young man next to her laughed. In a restaurant in Guang'an City, there was a hubbub of voices. "You are too polite." Wu Xian raised his cup. While toasting, Wu Xian drank a few cups of wine, and the atmosphere became even more lively. Especially the woman in red, whose eyes were full of admiration, made Wu Xian feel good. As they talked, they mentioned the assassinated Guang and city magistrate Lu Xiang. After all, this was the biggest event in the past few days. At first, everyone was still somewhat worried, but not long after, the main culprit was caught, and Wu Xian was not affected at all. This also let many people see Wu Xian's means. Speaking of that city magistrate, what does the scholar's murder have to do with young Master Wu? Why did he have to be so meddlesome? What happened to him in the end? Heaven has eyes, but it is a pity for young Master Lu. Someone said with some regret. The so-called young Master Lu was Lu Qingqiu, who assassinated Lu Xiang. Speaking of this, it was also because of me. I am sorry, young Master Lu. In the future, young Master Lu's parents and brothers will be my parents and brothers. I will definitely bear the responsibility. Wu Xian said in a powerful voice. There was another round of compliments. Wu Xian listened to the compliments of the crowd and felt a burst of satisfaction in his heart. He wanted to use these people to spread his reputation of being generous. Thinking of Lu Qingqiu, Wu Xian felt a little uneasy, but shook his head slightly and threw the matter out of his mind. It was all Lu Qingqiu's doing. What did it have to do with him? Sounds like a really good person. A young woman's voice sounded by the window. The compliments in the room suddenly fell silent, and everyone looked towards the window in disbelief. Wu Xian's hair stood on end, and he suddenly turned his head, only to see a delicate girl in an emerald green dress sitting on the windowsill, swinging her legs. She was about 17 or 18 years old, with a faint smile on her face. None of the people present knew how she had appeared there. "Who are you?" Someone's expression changed as he questioned. The girl looked at them in surprise, and then began to look around the room. She said casually, "I'm not sure what to do." "You have no right to ask." He did not put anyone in his eyes at all. Even though her appearance was strange and unfathomable, her words caused quite a few people to feel anger in their hearts. They even felt that it was absurd. It had to be known that the people here were either disciples of great clans or geniuses like Wu Xian, who were famous throughout the province. When not qualified to ask? Good. Although I don't know how you came here, I know you can't leave. Men, take her down first before we talk. I'd like to see if there's anyone in Guang and that I'm not qualified to ask. The one who spoke was Xie, a disciple of the Xie family of Guang'an. The Xie family had a great reputation within 1,000 miles. No matter where they went, they were respected and flattered. He did not expect that today, a girl of unknown origin would say that he was not qualified. He was so angry that he laughed. Wu Xian's eyes flickered, but he didn't say anything. This girl's appearance was strange and unpredictable, so it would be great if someone else was willing to measure her. I heard that you're cruel and tyrannical, but I didn't expect you to be so tolerant. The girl looked at Wu Xian and sneered. She shook her head and said, "You're cruel and tyrannical to those who can't beat you. If you're not confident, just shrink your head back." "Men," Xian frowned and shouted again, looking at the girl in front of him who did not take them seriously at all, and thinking that no one came in when he shouted just now, he suddenly felt a little uneasy. Wu Xian's face was wild with anger. He pressed his palm, and a piece of wood under his hand was immediately crushed into powder. "Young Master Xie, no need to shout." Wu Xian stood up and said, "Since you're here for me, don't hide your head and show your tail. I told you, you're not qualified to ask." The girl stretched. "I just want to see who on earth is so bold." "Boring." The girl's indifferent tone made them even angrier, especially the disdain in her words, which almost made Wu Xian explode. "You're courting death," Wu Xian shouted. His palm turned red, and he slapped at the girl. This palm could even smash a boulder into powder, and the others felt the heat coming from it. The few of them hurriedly retreated. They saw that the palm was about to hit the girl, but she didn't even bat an eyelid. "You're courting death. Don't blame others," Wu Xian thought, and his face revealed a trace of malevolence. However, before his thoughts dispersed, he saw a beam of light in the darkness behind the girl. A beam of sword light. Like lightning, it was dazzling in the dark night. Wu Xian, who was originally charging forward, felt his hair stand on end, and he retreated frantically. He felt that if he took another step forward, he would die. Who is it? Who is it? Such a fast sword? Wu Xian broke out in a cold sweat, but he heard a pata sound. He subconsciously looked in the direction of the sound and saw a hand falling to the ground. Wu Xian looked at the familiar hand in disbelief, and then he raised his wrist. Only then did he feel the intense pain, and he groaned. He could still endure the pain of losing a hand, but his heart sank to the bottom of an abyss. With just one sword, he didn't even realize that the other party had cut off his hand. If the other party wanted his life, Wu Xian's eyes were filled with disbelief and fear, and the eyes of the others were filled with shock and fear. Wu Xian was already a famous master, but he couldn't even take one sword. Who was that girl? And who was in the darkness? The girl shook her head in a rather bored manner. She didn't move, but she suddenly disappeared from the windowsill. Just like when she appeared, mysterious and unfathomable. Only a faint voice came, "You guys deal with it." "Yes," someone in the courtyard said respectfully. Bang! The door was kicked open, and two men in embroidered robes walked in from outside the door. They looked at them, and one of them waved his hand. "Take them down." When the people in the room saw the clothes of the two men, their expressions suddenly changed. The rear guard commandery, the fiercest dog under His Highness. "Why did you capture me?" Wu Xian's face turned pale, and he gritted his teeth. In fact, the moment he saw them, he understood, but he still didn't give up. "Not to capture you, but to capture you," the man in front sneered. The few people's faces turned pale. "Sir," the man sneered, "I don't know whether to say that you are blind or that you are bold. You don't even recognize His Highness, and you still dare to attack His Highness. Do you still want to live?" His Highness. Hearing these two words, the people in the room almost lost their balance, and their legs went soft, and they almost fell. Especially Xian, who was completely paralyzed. There were only two people who could be called by this word. One was the ruling king, and the other was the current princess. Finally, someone realized what the girl's surprised look meant. The few of them were really blind. Under the moonlight, an emerald green figure jumped from one roof to another. Looking at its movements, it looked like a child jumping out of a plane. "Li Dai," Qi Yuqing suddenly said. "Your Highness, I'll find you a wife. Which one do you like?" Qi Yuqing suddenly turned around and said. Li Dai was at a loss for a long time, and then he shook his head fiercely. "Wherever His Highness is, I'll be there. I don't want anything else. If His Highness must reward me, you can give me a few sword manuals." "You're so boring." Qi Yuqing twitched the corner of her mouth. She wanted to tease this machine-like subordinate, but his reaction made her feel a little bored. "There are so many interesting things in the world. You should try more." Li Dai was silent. For the first 20 years of his life, the sword was everything. In the future, His Highness was the most important, and the sword was second. Chapter 1282. In the early morning of Guang, a thin mist permeated the streets. Many people had already left their homes to buy some food before heading to work. The Lu's kanji shop at the corner of the street was the most popular shop in the area because of the large screen hanging above. For ordinary people, a television was still a luxury. Many people would come here in the morning to eat breakfast and watch the news. Yesterday, His Royal Highness gave an important speech when he went to the capital's 6th high school. He pointed out that the more time passes, the more important knowledge and talents are, and the more important the status and role of education is. "I believe whatever His Royal Highness says. If His Royal Highness says education is important, I'll make sure my eldest son goes to college, even if I have to sell everything I have." "How's your eldest son's studies?" second from the bottom in class. A proud voice said, "How can he go to college? If he can't get in, I'll break his legs and let him continue studying at home. I'm not afraid of raising him forever. Thanks to His Royal Highness, we would be lucky if we could eat our fill 20 years ago. We wouldn't have the life we have now. His Royal Highness brought us all this. Now that His Royal Highness says knowledge is important, I must make sure my son goes to college." Some people who were eating breakfast were watching the news and discussing it. In a corner of the Lou's kanji shop, Honeysuckle sat there in a long emerald dress, the corners of her mouth slightly raised. Listening to these people talk is quite interesting. Guangin's accent is quite interesting. There was a pile of bowls beside her. If it wasn't for the sword on Li Dai's back and the unapproachable aura, Honeysuckle's appearance would have attracted a lot of attention. Even so, many people were sneaking glances at Honeysuckle. They had never seen such a beautiful girl in Guangin. "Don't you want to know what I'm doing here?" Honeysuckle started a chat with Li Dai out of boredom. "I'll be wherever His Royal Highness is." After saying this, Li Dai continued to look down. "Tell me, are you made of wood? You look like you're made of clay or wood every day. Whatever His Royal Highness says." Honeysuckle's face twitched. It was too difficult to talk to Li Dai. She really wanted to slap him to the wall. "Back then, when my father was celebrating the Queen Mother's birthday, he used more than 600 photos to make a half-body photo of the Queen Mother. He even drew a treasure map on the back and said, 'Do you want the treasure? It's right there, one piece, ahem, right on the treasure map. After that, I will distribute the photos to all parts of Dayo.'" Although Li Dai didn't say anything, his ears moved. Honeysuckle finally felt that the guy in front of him wasn't really a piece of wood. "I asked Royal Father what the hidden treasure was, but Royal Father didn't tell me. If he doesn't tell me, I'll go and take a look myself. After so many years, I've collected almost 400 pieces. There's a person called Lu Cheng here. In his early years, he was an assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights in the Yun Nation. Later, the Yun Nation was gone, and he came back to retire. I heard that he secretly collected more than 100 of them. With these, I might be able to figure out. This man deserves to die," Li Dai suddenly said. Honeysuckle looked at him in surprise. "An official from the previous dynasty racked his brains to find your highness's treasure. Who would believe that he had no other intentions? He would rather kill the wrong person than let him go." Li Dai's eyes were full of killing intent. "You can use your brain occasionally." Honeysuckle smiled and looked at him with admiration. "However, there are many people with ulterior motives. They can't cause much trouble." Honeysuckle waved her hand indifferently. She was very clear about the technological gap between Dayo and Earth. It wasn't something that could be caught up in a short period of 20 to 30 years. Even with Earth's technology as a reference, Dayo still had to walk its own path. As for the others, they were even further behind. If they hadn't studied in Dayo, a book called New Concept Physics course would be enough for them to study for 80 to 100 years. It's not convenient for me to do this. If I do, it will be using my power to oppress others. It won't be good if word gets out. Honeysuckle added, "You will handle it in a while." "Yes. Do you know what to do?" "Just rush in and press the sword against the neck." Li Dai's method was simple and brutal. Sure enough, Honeysuckle twitched her mouth and smiled. "That works too. Cover your face and change your sword. Otherwise, they will know it's you." "Okay." Li Dai put the broken sword on the table, turned around, and left. After an hour, Li Dai returned and placed a wooden box on the table. "Did it go well?" Honeysuckle smiled as she took the box, opened it, and closed it again. "I cut off 2 of his son's fingers," Li Dai said expressionlessly. "You don't have to tell me about this." Honeysuckle waved her hand. "Let's go back." Li Dai nodded and made up his mind to only talk about the results and not the process next time. Honeysuckle brought Li Dai back to the capital. She stayed in her room for a day and went out again. 7 days later, Honeysuckle returned to the capital. Now that 20 years had passed, most people had already given up. The remaining photos were in the hands of a few people, which saved her a lot of effort. Haha, I finally found a location. 2 days later, A triumphant cheer came from Honeysuckle's palace. So what if you didn't tell me? I still found it, didn't I? I want to see what you were hiding. At this time, there were more than 600 photos on the ground in the palace. Except for a few empty ones, the rest had been collected by her. There was also a stack of high-definition satellite images at the side. After comparing for 2 days, the dozen or so guards finally found the location of the hidden treasure, and their eyes were about to blink. It's not far from Lawn City. Someone, prepare the carriage. When Honeysuckle left the palace in a hurry, Rinpochian had already received the news. This girl. Rinpochian smiled and shook his head. He thought of something and was a little distracted. If Honeysuckle hadn't mentioned the hidden treasure, he would have forgotten about it. However, the location of the hidden treasure was very meaningful to him. It was the place where he first appeared in this world. At that time, he was just a social animal who had just graduated from university. He was scared half to death when someone put a knife to his neck, and his mind was filled with thoughts of how to survive. Later on, he just wanted to make some money. He didn't expect the things that happened later. It was rare for Rinpochian to put down his work and sit there in a daze for more than an hour before he came back to his senses. He smiled, picked up the booklet, and continued reading. That girl will be pleasantly surprised. It's such a big box. How many things are hidden in it? Even with a map, Honeysuckle still spent a day to find the exact location. After digging more than 4 meters deep, she found a wooden box that was 1 meter wide. After opening the box, there were layers of waterproof cloth. Honeysuckle chased the others to one side and excitedly opened all of them. What appeared in front of Honeysuckle was 2018 edition of mathematics textbooks from primary school to university, physics and chemistry textbooks from junior high school to university, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Investiture of the Gods, Journey to the West. There was also a note. If you learn mathematics, physics, and chemistry well, you don't have to be afraid to travel the world. Honeysuckle was stunned for a long time, like a groundhog. That's it? I spent more than a year just for this? Chapter 1283. Rinpochian burst into laughter when he saw Honeysuckle shouting like a groundhog in the video. Honeysuckle brought many guards with him, so his every move was under Rinpochian's control. Even the video was sent back. He didn't expect that the things he came up with on a whim would end up harming his own daughter. However, it wasn't a problem since she was his own daughter. Who else would he harm if not her? However, he didn't expect things to develop to such a state. If he didn't develop Dayo to such a state, someone could really make a career out of these books. Is Your Highness very happy? Exionja, who was wearing a helmet and armor, heard Rinpochian's laughter from outside the hall. She walked in, cupped her fists, and greeted him expressionlessly. In fact, she was very happy to see Rinpochian so happy. Her Highness had been working too hard all these years. Others didn't know, but she knew that Her Highness would be busy until midnight every day and rarely had any free time. However, she didn't know how to express herself and always acted like she didn't mean it. Don't be so serious. Smile more. Look at this. Jiang Yunhe waved his hand and played the video again. The scene from that time appeared in the air. Honeysuckle opened the box expectantly and opened the outer package. Then he widened his eyes and looked sluggish. He then shouted angrily like a groundhog. Even Exionja couldn't help but smile when she saw this scene. In her heart, the most important people were the Empress and Prince Yu, followed by Honeysuckle. She had watched Honeysuckle grow up. Her Highness seems to be very angry. Rinpochian laughed even more happily. This little episode put Rinpochian in a good mood, and he quickly picked up the memorials from various places to read and comment on them from time to time. The memorials from various places could only be sent to him after being reviewed by the imperial court. Those messy memorials were all swept away. For example, a casual chat. The fish from Lake Wu is very delicious. There are few bones, and the meat is tender and delicious. It's been a long time since I've had an audience with Your Highness. How about I personally celebrate Your Highness's birthday in Diandu next month. For example, a random chat. I went to a brothel yesterday. The girls are very beautiful. Do you want to see them, Your Highness? Or a request for money. Willow City is very good. Everything is good, but we lack money. We need to allocate funds to set up factories and create more jobs. There were even those who complained. Yesterday, when the Peace City's mayor was discussing the matter of the joint development of the two cities, the Peace City's mayor was insolent and smashed 3 of my chairs with his head. They were all made of good wood. Yesterday, I was discussing some matters with the Calm Cloud City Magistrate, but the Calm Cloud City Magistrate was very rude. He threw a chair at me and broke 3 chairs. The doctor said that I need to stay in bed for a week to recover. Most of the memorials were this sort of nonsense. However, Deo was too big. Even if he removed the messy ones, he still had to deal with a lot of memorials every day. Not to mention, he still had to control the direction and results of the various laboratories, as well as the situation with the foreign races. Your Highness, there's good news from the Research Institute, someone reported shortly afterwards. Speak. Rinpoche's interest was piqued. He put down the booklet in his hand and looked up. Xin continued to stand at the side. The laboratory said that Chinchilla's consciousness is showing signs of recovery. Rinpoche's eyes lit up, and he revealed a hearty smile. It is indeed great news. Xin, make the arrangements and set off immediately. Yes. Also, bring Lin Shaola here. Yes. An hour later, Rinpoche arrived at the Research Institute with Lin Shaola, who was wearing glasses and couldn't even open her eyes. What's the situation? For me to take a look. Rinpoche didn't waste any time, got out of the car, and walked inside. Thanks to the cultivation fluid data that Your Highness brought back, there has been considerable progress in the research on the Jing Jade flower. At present, there are already 3 Jing Jade flowers that have reached maturity. As previously speculated, this Jing Jade flower has a great effect on the recovery of the chinchilla race's consciousness. Previously, Rinpoche brought the plants and seeds of the Jing Jade flower back to Earth. After all, there was an advantage in having a different timeline on Earth. Eventually, he obtained a nutrient solution made from crystals and other materials, which could greatly shorten the growth cycle of the Jing Jade flower. Now, he was finally seeing returns. How clear-headed are you? This was the question that Rinpoche was most concerned about. The chinchilla race was very secretive, but the implications were huge. As long as she regained consciousness, Rinpoche felt that he could get a lot of valuable information from her. She has been unconscious for too long, and even the Jing Jade flower can't make her recover immediately. However, everything is changing for the better. Now, her aggressiveness has almost disappeared. Although she is still a little sluggish, according to our observations, she is gradually recovering, and there is a high possibility that she will completely regain her consciousness. If everything goes well, she will really wake up in a few days. Let's go and take a look. Rinpoche saw the chinchilla again. She was now wearing a white robe, and her limbs were fixed to a chair. The sharp teeth that originally protruded from her mouth had shrunk by more than half, and were only slightly longer than a human's canine teeth. However, her ears and tail hadn't changed much. Presumably, these were the physical signs of an adult chinchilla. Just as the person in charge said, her aggressiveness from before had disappeared. She sat there in a daze and didn't respond, even when a few people came. Has she become a fool? Lin Shaola finally perked up. She circled around the chinchilla a few times with a worried look on her face. It wasn't easy to meet someone of the same race as her, but it turned out to be a fool. It's just a temporary condition. She has been insane for too long and needs some time to recover. The person in charge emphasized again. Lin Shaola had been dozing off along the way and didn't hear what the others said. Now, she was pleasantly surprised and asked, "She can still recover? I can still talk to her?" This is also what I wanted to say. If someone of the same race is around, it will be very beneficial for her recovery. I hope that Miss Lin can stay here for a few days and talk to her every day. It is best to use the language of your race or let her feel something familiar. Lin Shaola turned to look at Jiang Yunhe. Anyway, You're going to sleep wherever you are. Talk to her when you wake up. Ren Baqian waved his hand. The problem is, what is the language of my race? Lin Xiaola had a blank look on her face. Ren Baqian was speechless. You don't have any of it in your inherited memories? A little. I only know a few words. Just say whatever you know. No matter what, you are of the same race. When she wakes up and sees you, I believe she'll be a lot more relaxed. Ren Baqian sighed. Oh, Lin Xiaola didn't care where she was going to sleep. She just felt a little lost and didn't know what to do. Take good care of them and inform me when they regain their sanity. After a while, Ren Baqian flipped through the report and looked at Jing Yuhua's condition. This plant wasn't only useful for chinchillas, but also for other creatures. It could make other creatures enter a state of madness, which was the exact opposite of the effect on chinchillas. Not only can it make other creatures crazy, but it can also increase the strength of other creatures in a short period of time. As long as the side effects of going crazy and losing their sanity are minimized, it will be very useful. You can research in this direction. Ren Baqian concluded. 3 days later. Your Highness, there is news from the Research Institute that the chinchillas have completely regained their sanity. Ren Baqian had just left the court session when someone informed him. Can they communicate? Prepare the carriage. Chapter 1284. How's her condition now? She has eaten more than a ton of meat since she woke up, and we haven't had the chance to ask her anything yet, the person in charge of the Research Institute said as he followed behind Ren Baqian. She was too weak previously, so eating this food only replenished her body's energy deficit. In addition, we use some medicine to block her vitality, so her strength can only be restored to below the cardinal heaven level. On the other side of Ren Baqian was Xianjia. Although she was expressionless, she was curious about Lin Xiaola's kind. She has a good appetite. Ren Baqian smiled. It was unknown how long the other party had been starving in that cave, relying solely on some plants and moss to survive. However, those things were nothing more than a snack for an expert. The fact that he hadn't starved to death after so many years showed that his strength wasn't shallow. The Empress easily took her down, which was why she had been starving for thousands of years and lost her mind. According to some research on her body, she was an expert who had reached that level at her peak. Before the Empress returned, she couldn't be allowed to regain her strength, or else no one would be able to control her. When they came to an observation room, they could see Chinchilla sitting on the bed through the glass. In front of him was a table filled with plates of meat. At this time, Chinchilla's eyes were filled with the word hungry. It grabbed a fist-sized piece of meat with its hand and stuffed it into its mouth, swallowing it in 2 bites. Lin Xiaola was paralyzed with a bulging stomach. Obviously, she couldn't compare to her kind in terms of appetite. According to our estimates, she should be close to full, but she doesn't seem to have any intention of stopping. It should be because hunger left too deep in her memory. She was still in a muddle-headed state before, but now that she is awake, she can't control herself. Let's go in after she finishes eating, Ren Baqian said nonchalantly. A creature that had lived on moss and small amounts of plants for thousands of years wouldn't be stuffed to death no matter how much she ate. After a while, the bucket of meat in the room disappeared completely. Chinchilla looked up at the door. However, when the door opened again, no food was sent in. Instead, a bald, sturdy young man with shiny, metallic skin walked in. A valiant aura hit Ren Baqian in the face. Of course, this valiant aura only applied to ordinary people. I'm glad to see that you have regained consciousness. Ren Baqian walked into the room. Someone moved a chair behind him, and he sat down. He then pointed at Lin Xiaola and said, "She's a member of your race, and also a good friend of me, my wife, and my daughter. I think our human race and your race can also establish such a friendship." Lin Xiaola nodded repeatedly to prove that what he said was true. In fact, to her, her fellow clansmen were far less important than Ren Baqian, Qi Zixiao, and Qi Yuqing. But for the chinchillas, Lin Xiaola was the best bridge. The other party could also see that Lin Xiaola was living a good life with the humans. What if it wasn't good? He definitely couldn't just eat and sleep all day and still have a silly personality. Do you know the common language? How should I address you? When Mioli woke up, Chinchilla, on the other hand, was very calm. She was completely different from Lin Xiaola's simple-minded appearance. There was no hostility. Can you tell me why you were in that cave? It looks like you've been there for a long time, while your people are in another area. Mio Li's eyes lit up. Do you know where my people are? She glanced at the paralyzed Lin Xiaola and said, Not this little fellow. You only know the general area. Someone has encountered them, but I don't know their exact location. Perhaps you can go and find them yourself. The astrolabe has fallen into your hands, right? Mioli asked calmly. It was impossible to tell that she had guarded the astrolabe for thousands of years. From her and Lin Xiaola, Rinpochian felt that the chinchillas had good personalities. Even if it were a human, they would probably fight to the death if something that they had guarded for thousands of years fell into the hands of others. You are referring to that astrolabe, right? Is it useful for you to have it? It's the key to our home, Mioli said calmly. Tell me in detail. As far as I know, there aren't many chinchillas now. I can help you. The premise is that I have to understand your situation. Although he hadn't found any traces of the chinchillas, this also showed that there weren't many chinchillas. Humans couldn't hide their numbers even if they wanted to. A trace of reminiscence flashed in Mio Li's eyes as she smiled bitterly and said, We were defeated back then. Rinpochian listened quietly. His heart, however, was in a state of shock. According to Mio Li, the chinchillas were defeated back then. Their enemy was the rolling wind race, of course, the so-called war. In terms of numbers, it was only slightly better than the fight at the village entrance. After all, the more powerful the race, the lower their fertility rate. The two races added up to less than 30,000 people. A battle between thousands of people was considered a big battle. However, from her description, it was a battle that could destroy mountains and rivers. Compared to the immortal heaven of the human race and the ancestral atavism of the eight-armed race, this wasn't an exaggeration. In the chinchillas, such experts were called ancestral saints. They had been fighting this kind of war for thousands of years. At first, there were more than 50 ancestral saints on both sides, but in the end, there were only 3 ancestral saints left. The chinchillas had less than 100 people and were about to be destroyed. They had no choice but to leave through a stone gate that had been guarded below the ancestral land and arrived at the 60,000 mountains. There was a lot of information in this information. At the very least, it showed that the chinchillas and the rolling wind race were both powerful races with long lifespans. When they reached adulthood, they would have the strength of the longevity heaven. What surprised Rinpochian even more was that the chinchillas and the rolling wind race actually came from the same world. Looking at the time, the rolling wind race outside the two world mountains weren't the ones who fought with the chinchillas. They probably came to this world a long time ago. Since the chinchillas had a gate to come here, it wasn't surprising that the rolling wind race had come here earlier. As for Miao Li's appearance on Mount Liuzue, it was because the round disc had come to Mount Liuzue and she had stayed there to guard it. She didn't expect to stay there for thousands of years. She had already lost control 3,000 years ago. According to Miao Li's description, Rinpochian guessed that the round disc was charging. It seemed like there were still many secrets on Mount Liuzue that hadn't been discovered. After listening to this, Rinpochian was silent for a moment before laughing and saying, It seems like we not only have her as a bridge of friendship, but also a common enemy. Miao Li's eyes suddenly turned cold, and a bone-chilling aura came from her body. The rolling wind race. They're here too? Yes, and we are fighting with them. Perhaps you will be happy to take revenge. Good. I didn't expect them to chase us all the way here. Miao Li's face was as cold as frost. Rinpochian didn't correct her misunderstanding. This is the stone gate you're talking about, right? Jiang Yunhe pressed the emblem on his sleeve a few times, and an image suddenly appeared in the air. On the image was a stone gate that was 4 meters tall. The shape was simple, and could even be considered simple. Not bad. What will happen if one passes through the stone gate without using the astrolabe? I'm not sure. People have passed through the stone gate in the past, but no one has ever returned. Rinpoche frowned. He now had some guesses about the stone gate. This should be a portal that connected to other worlds. However, no one knew whether it was a two-way or multi-directional portal. Many of the Wan race probably came here through the stone gate. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.